What if Harry Potter was abandoned the night he survived Voldemort? Not protected. Dumbledore leaves him behind like a problem to be managed, not a child to be loved. But someone else finds him first. Gandalf the Grey. Instead of growing up scared and unwanted, Harry is raised with discipline, patience, and a quiet kind of power. Magic isn't just spells here. It's control, wisdom, and knowing when not to strike. So when Harry finally walks into Hogwarts, he doesn't act like a chosen one. He watches. He learns. He doesn't trust easily. And Dumbledore realizes too late, the boy he tried to shape is no longer his. The house was still burning when Gandalf arrived. He stood at the edge of the garden, staff in hand, watching the last of the flames lick at what remained of the Potter home. The roof had caved in. Half the walls were gone. Smoke curled up into the October sky, mixing with clouds that promised rain but never delivered. Gandalf had felt it 3 hours ago. A disturbance in the fabric of things. Something old and terrible brushing against something older and more terrible. He had been in the mountains at the time, consulting with the eagles about movements in the east, when it hit him like a physical blow. He knew that feeling. He had felt it before, long ago, in an age of the world that few now remembered, Sauron. Not fully, not directly, but the echo of him, the fingerprint. And so Gandalf had come to this place called Godric's Hollow, following the thread of that dark resonance across worlds and distances that would take too long to explain, and he had found this. A ruined cottage, the smell of death, and something else. He moved through the shattered doorway, his staff casting a pale light that pushed back the shadows. Glass crunched under his boots, the floorboards creaked. Somewhere in the rubble a clock was still ticking, which struck him as absurd. The bodies were in the hallway. A man first. Young. Black hair, glasses knocked askew, one lens cracked. His wand lay a few feet away, as if he had been reaching for it when he fell. Gandalf knelt and closed his eyes with 2 fingers. Whatever life this man had lived, it was over now. He found the woman on the stairs. Red hair fanned out around her head. Her arms were stretched forward toward the nursery door, and even in death her face held a look of fierce determination. She had been protecting something. Someone. Gandalf stepped over her carefully, respectfully, and pushed open the nursery door. The crib was still standing. That was the first thing he noticed. In a room where the ceiling had partially collapsed, where toys and books and a changing table had been reduced to splinters, the crib stood untouched. And inside it, wrapped in a blue blanket, was a baby, alive. The child was crying, not the desperate wailing of injury, but the confused, frightened sobs of a baby who had woken to find his world gone wrong. Gandalf approached slowly, not wanting to frighten him further. "Shh," he murmured. "Shh, little one." He reached into the crib and lifted the boy. The baby was warm in his arms, solid and real. Maybe 15 months old if Gandalf was any judge. Green eyes, red from crying. Dark hair that stuck up at odd angles. And on his forehead, a scar. Gandalf felt his breath catch. The scar was shaped like a lightning bolt, and it was glowing. Not brightly, just a faint pulse, like the last ember of a dying fire. But the magic coming off it was unmistakable. Old magic, dark magic, and beneath that something else entirely. The mark of Sauron's rising shadow. "By the Valar," Gandalf whispered. He had come expecting to find the source of the disturbance. He had not expected to find a child bearing the weight of 2 worlds on his tiny shoulders. The baby grabbed at Gandalf's beard and tugged. His crying had stopped, replaced by a look of curious concentration. Gandalf could not help but smile, despite everything. "Well," he said quietly, "it seems fate has brought us together, young one. I wonder what it wants of us." The baby said nothing. Babies rarely did. Gandalf heard voices outside. Shouts. An engine of some kind. He moved to the broken window and looked down at the lane. A massive man on an even more massive motorcycle was pulling up to the wreckage. Behind him, a figure in long robes was already striding toward the cottage. Gandalf recognized the robes. He had seen their like before, in other places. Wizards' robes, though of a different tradition than his own. The man wearing them had a long white beard, half-moon spectacles, and an air of authority that suggested he was used to being obeyed. This would be Dumbledore, then. The headmaster that Gandalf's sources had mentioned. The leader of the resistance against the dark wizard Voldemort, who had apparently done all this. Gandalf considered making himself known. But something held him back. Call it instinct. Call it the wisdom of many long years. He wrapped himself in shadow and stillness, becoming one with the ruined walls, and he watched. Dumbledore entered the cottage. His face went pale when he saw the bodies, but he did not weep. He simply stood there for a long moment, eyes closed, and then he moved to the nursery. "Hagrid," he called. "The boy is here." The giant man came thundering in, his face streaked with tears. "He's alive. Little Harry's alive." "It would seem so." Dumbledore lifted the baby from the crib. He examined the scar on Harry's forehead with a frown. Remarkable. The curse should have killed him. And yet, what happened to him? Hagrid asked. "I cannot say for certain. But I believe Lily's sacrifice protected him. Love, Hagrid. The most powerful magic of all." Gandalf listened. Love as protection. Yes, that fit. The mother on the stairs, arms outstretched. She had given her life for her son, and that had meant something. But Dumbledore was only seeing half the picture. He did not feel what Gandalf felt in that scar. He did not sense the deeper darkness lurking beneath the surface. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Gandalf followed at a distance as Dumbledore and Hagrid left the cottage. He watched them fly through the night sky, Hagrid on the motorcycle, Dumbledore vanishing and reappearing in that odd blink and miss it way these wizards had. He trailed them across the country, through cold wind and colder darkness, until they arrived at a perfectly ordinary street in a perfectly ordinary town called Little Winging. Privet Drive. Dumbledore was already there when Hagrid arrived. He had been joined by a stern woman in emerald robes, and they were having what looked like a heated argument. "You can't mean to leave him here," the woman was saying. "I've watched these people all day. They're the worst sort of muggles. Petty, cruel. They won't understand what he is. He must be raised away from our world," Dumbledore said. "The blood protection from Lily's sacrifice will keep him safe here. He will be protected from any who might seek to harm him. But will he be loved?" Dumbledore did not answer that question. Instead, he took the baby from Hagrid's arms and carried him to the door of number 4, Privet Drive. He placed the child on the doorstep, tucking an envelope into his blanket. The woman in emerald robes wiped her eyes. Hagrid was openly weeping, and Dumbledore stood there with his hands clasped, looking down at the sleeping baby with an expression that Gandalf could not quite read. Then he turned and walked away. They all walked away. Gandalf remained in the shadows watching as Hagrid's motorcycle roared off into the sky and the two wizards vanished with soft pops. Then there was silence. Just the baby on the doorstep, breathing softly, wrapped in a thin blanket against the November cold. Gandalf waited. 1 hour passed. Then 2. The sky began to lighten in the east. Still no one came. The baby stirred and whimpered but did not wake. His little fingers were turning blue from the cold. This was wrong. Gandalf had seen many things in his long years. He had witnessed the fall of kingdoms and the death of stars. He had walked in the halls of the Valar and spoken with beings older than the world itself. And in all that time, in all those ages, he had learned to recognize evil when he saw it. Leaving a child on a doorstep in the cold, with only a letter for explanation, was not evil. Not quite, but it was careless. It was cold. And it was the sort of decision that was made by men who had forgotten what it meant to be young and afraid and alone. Gandalf stepped out of the shadows. He walked up the garden path, his staff clicking softly against the pavement. The baby did not wake as Gandalf knelt beside him. Up close, the scar was more visible, and the magic within it more troubling. This child had been touched by something far older than the dark wizard who had killed his parents. This child was caught between two worlds, two prophecies, two destinies, and Gandalf was not going to leave him on a doorstep. He lifted the baby gently into his arms. The child stirred, green eyes blinking open, and for a moment they just looked at each other. "Hello, Harry," Gandalf said softly. "My name is Gandalf. I am going to take care of you now." The front door opened. A woman stood there in a pink housecoat, her face thin and sharp, her neck craning forward like a startled bird. She looked at Gandalf. She looked at the baby. Her mouth opened and closed several times before any sound came out. "Who are you? What are you doing with that?" This child was left on your doorstep," Gandalf said calmly. "I am taking him. You can't just— There was a letter. Your sister is dead." The words were not unkind, but they were direct. "Her son needs someone who will care for him, who will love him. Will you do that?" The woman's face went through several changes: shock, grief, and then, unmistakably, relief. She glanced back into the house, where a large man was snoring on the couch and a fat baby was wailing in his playpen. We can't possibly. Vernon wouldn't." "Then it is settled." Gandalf inclined his head politely. "Good day to you, madam." He turned and walked away before she could respond. Behind him, he heard her spluttering, heard her call for her husband, heard the beginning of what promised to be a very loud argument. But by the time Vernon Dursley came puffing to the door, Gandalf and Harry were gone. The orange glow of a street lamp was the last thing Privet Drive saw of them. A tall figure in gray, a baby in his arms, and then nothing but empty pavement and the first pale light of dawn. The grove was quiet. Gandalf had chosen this spot carefully. It was half a mile from any road, shielded from view by old oak trees and older magic. A small fire burned at the center of the clearing, casting dancing shadows on the surrounding trunks. Harry lay on a bed of soft moss, wrapped in a traveling cloak that Gandalf had conjured. The baby was sleeping now, exhausted by the events of the night, and his breathing was slow and even. Gandalf sat beside him watching. The scar worried him. Even now, in the quiet of the forest, he could feel the magic pulsing within it. It was like a splinter of darkness lodged beneath the skin, too deep to remove, too dangerous to ignore. He reached out and touched it gently with one finger. The magic recoiled. Not violently, but defensively, like an animal protecting its territory. And in that moment Gandalf felt it clearly. The presence that lurked within the scar. The shadow of a shadow. This was not Voldemort's magic. Oh, there was some of that in there too. A fragment of the dark wizard's soul clinging to life like a parasite. But beneath that, far deeper, was something else entirely. The touch of Sauron. How it had gotten there, Gandalf could not say. Perhaps it had always been there, waiting for the right moment to manifest. Perhaps Voldemort's attack had awakened something that had been dormant since Harry's birth. Perhaps fate itself had arranged this meeting of two darknesses, knowing that only through such an intersection could the light prevail. But whatever the cause, the meaning was clear. This child was bound to Sauron's rising shadow, and that meant he was Gandalf's responsibility now. Harry's eyes opened. For a moment, they just looked at each other, the ancient wizard and the infant boy, two very different beings brought together by forces neither fully understood. Then Harry smiled. It was a small smile, tentative and sleepy, but it was real, and something in Gandalf's old heart shifted at the sight of it. "Well then," he murmured, brushing a lock of dark hair from Harry's forehead. "It seems we are in this together, you and I, whatever this turns out to be." He began to hum an old tune, an elvish lullaby, sung in Rivendell for thousands of years, meant to ward off evil dreams and bring peaceful rest. The words were not important. The feeling was. Harry's eyes drifted closed. His breathing deepened. And as the fire crackled and the stars wheeled overhead, the old wizard held the child close and made a silent promise. He would protect this boy. He would teach him. He would prepare him for whatever darkness lay ahead, whatever it took.
"Foh you are, yours let our Uncle Gandalf! Uncle Gandalf, look!"
Gandalf looked up from his pipe to see a small figure racing across the sunlit grass toward him. Harry Potter, now 5 years old, was holding something cupped in his hands, his face flushed with excitement.
"What have you found, my boy?" "A butterfly."
"But it's different. It's got all these colors that change when you look at it." Gandalf examined the creature in Harry's palms. It was indeed unusual. The wings shifted through shades of blue and green and gold as he watched, never settling on any one hue. "Ah," he said. "That is a Shire wing. They are quite rare even here. It seems you have a gift for finding special things, Harry." Harry beamed. "Can I keep it? I think it would be happier in the garden, don't you? But perhaps you could visit it from time to time." Harry considered this seriously. Then he nodded and carefully carried the butterfly to a nearby flower bed, where he set it down with exaggerated gentleness. They were in the Shire, in the garden of a hole called Bag End. Gandalf had brought Harry here shortly after taking him from Privet Drive, knowing that the Hobbit's peaceful land would be a safe place for a child to grow. The Shire was protected by old enchantments. Nothing dark could enter here, nothing evil. It was exactly what Harry needed. The door of Bag End opened, and a small round figure emerged carrying a tray laden with cakes and tea. "There you are," Bilbo Baggins said cheerfully. "I thought I heard someone making a ruckus. Come and have some elevenses, both of you." Harry ran to the table that had been set up under an apple tree, his eyes wide at the sight of the cakes. "Are those the ones with honey? Made them special for you, young Harry."
"Thanks, Mr. Bilbo."
Gandalf settled into a comfortable chair and accepted a cup of tea. Bilbo sat across from him, watching Harry devour a honey cake with the single-minded focus of a hungry 5-year-old. "He's growing fast," Bilbo observed quietly. "He is? And the dreams? Are they still better?" Gandalf's face was carefully neutral. He has not woken screaming in several weeks now. In truth, the nightmares had been terrible at first. Harry would wake in the middle of the night, sobbing about fire and a great burning eye. Gandalf knew what those dreams meant. The connection to Sauron was still there, still pulsing in that scar, and even across worlds and dimensions it could reach the child's sleeping mind. But Gandalf had taught Harry how to fight back. Simple techniques at first, things any child could understand. When you see the fire, imagine water. When you see the eye, close your own eyes and count to 10, small defenses building blocks. Harry was learning. Bilbo shook his head slowly. "I still don't understand half of what you've told me about his past. Dark lords and prophecies and such. It all sounds terribly grand." "It is terribly dangerous," Gandalf corrected. "But that is precisely why I brought him here. He needs years of peace and happiness before he must face what awaits him. And you're certain it does await him, that he can't just stay here. Become a hobbit, more or less." Gandalf did not answer immediately. He watched Harry finish his cake and reach for another, chocolate smeared across his chin. A normal child doing normal things, safe and loved and happy. But the scar on his forehead told a different story. "I wish he could," Gandalf said finally. "But fate has other plans. Rivendell, hold still, young one. Let me see." Harry sat on a carved wooden bench in the house of Elrond, trying not to fidget as the tall elf lord examined his forehead. Sunlight streamed through windows that seemed to be made of light itself, and somewhere in the distance, someone was playing music so beautiful it made Harry's chest hurt. He was 7 now. Tall for his age, thin, with his mother's green eyes and his father's untamable hair. The scar had faded to a pale pink line, barely visible unless you knew to look for it. But Elrond was looking. "Interesting," the elf murmured. "There are several layers of magic here. A curse, a protection, and beneath both, he trailed off frowning. Is it bad? Harry asked. Elrond's expression softened. It is complicated, young Harry, but not necessarily bad. Tell me, do you still have the dreams? Sometimes. Uncle Gandalf taught me how to make them go away. Did he now? Elrond glanced at Gandalf, who was standing by the door. And what else has he taught you? Harry launched into an enthusiastic description of everything he had learned. The elvish words, the stories, the way to find water in the woods, and the names of all the stars. Gandalf watched him with a mixture of pride and something that might have been sadness. When Harry finished, Elrond nodded slowly. You have been well taught. But there is much more to learn. Gandalf, a word. They moved to the far end of the hall, speaking in low voices that Harry couldn't quite catch. He strained to hear, but the music from somewhere else in the house seemed to swell, covering their conversation. Finally, Gandalf returned. How would you like to learn something new today? What? A word. A very special word in the tongue of the elves. Harry sat up straighter. Yes, please. Gandalf smiled. The word is melon. It means friend. Melon. Harry repeated carefully. Good. That word has power, Harry. It can open doors that seem closed. It can reach hearts that seem hard. Remember it. Harry nodded seriously. He didn't fully understand, but he could tell it was important. And if Uncle Gandalf said it was important, then it was. Later, as they walked through the gardens of Rivendell, Elrond caught up with them. He knelt so that he was at Harry's eye level. Young Harry, I want you to know something. Sir, rising you here in Middle-earth may bind your destiny to our wars. Gandalf and I have discussed this at length. There are those who believe you should be returned to your own world, to face only the challenges that await you there. Harry's stomach twisted. You want to send me away? That is not what I said. Elrond's voice was gentle. I am saying that the choice may not be ours to make. Fate has its own designs. But whatever happens, wherever your path leads, know this. You have friends in this land. You will always have a home in Rivendell. He pressed something into Harry's hand. A small silver pendant shaped like a leaf. For luck, Elrond said, and for hope.
TBLEMO and TAFs again!
Put your weight into it. Harry swung the wooden sword with all his strength. It connected with the dwarf's shield with a satisfying crack, but the dwarf didn't budge. Better. Thorin's nephew Philly grinned through his beard. You're getting stronger, lad. Another few years and you might actually be able to hurt someone.
I almost hurt you that time.
In your dreams, maybe. Come on, water break. Harry collapsed onto a stone bench, his arms aching, his breath coming in gasps. The great hall of the dwarven settlement was lit by torches that never seemed to burn out, and somewhere in the depths of the mountain, he could hear the ring of hammers on anvils. He was 8 now, and this was his 3rd visit to the dwarves. Gandalf had insisted he learn something of combat, and the dwarves were excellent teachers. They were tough and honest, and they didn't treat him like he was made of glass. Philly handed him a cup of water. You're quiet today. Thinking about something. I had a dream last night. The bad kind? Harry nodded. There was fire, and a big tower, and something looking at me. Philly's expression grew serious. You told Gandalf. He knows. He always knows. Harry took a long drink of water. He says I need to be ready. That something's coming. But he won't tell me what. Probably because he doesn't know himself. The old wizard's smart, but even he can't see everything. Philly clapped Harry on the shoulder. What I know is this. You've got heart, lad. Whatever's coming, you'll face it. And you won't face it alone. That night, Gandalf found Harry sitting on a ledge overlooking a vast underground lake. The water was still and dark, reflecting the light of 1,000 crystal formations in the ceiling above. May I join you? Harry nodded, and Gandalf settled beside him with a soft grunt. You've been thinking. Always am. A dangerous habit. But Gandalf was smiling. What troubles you, Harry? The scar. Harry touched his forehead. It's not from Voldemort, is it? Not just from him. Gandalf was silent for a long moment. Then he sighed. You are wise beyond your years. No, the scar is not just from Voldemort. There is an older darkness bound to you, Harry. A shadow from my world that has somehow touched yours. What is it? His name is Sauron. He is a being of immense power and immense evil. Long ago, he nearly conquered all of Middle-earth. He was defeated, but not destroyed. And now, Gandalf looked out at the dark water. Now he is gathering strength again. And somehow you are connected to his rising. Harry absorbed this. Is that why you took me? Because of Sauron. I took you because a child was in need. I kept you because I came to love you. Gandalf placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. Whatever connection exists between you and Sauron, it does not define you. You are Harry Potter. You are kind and brave and good. Those things matter far more than any scar. But I'll have to fight him, won't I? Someday? Perhaps. Perhaps not. The future is never set in stone. Gandalf smiled gently. But if that day comes, you will not fight alone. I will be with you. Your friends will be with you. And together, we will face whatever darkness awaits. Harry leaned against the old wizard's side, taking comfort in his warmth and solidity. I'm glad you took me, he said quietly. I'm glad I don't live with those people on Privet Drive. As am I, my boy. As am I, Gauder. The cottage was ruins now, overgrown with ivy and wild roses. Harry stood at the gate, staring at what remained of the place where he was born. He was 9. Gandalf had finally agreed to bring him here, after years of questions and pleading. Harry needed to see it. He needed to understand. This is where they lived, Gandalf said quietly. Your parents. James and Lily Potter. Harry nodded. He couldn't speak. There was a lump in his throat that wouldn't go away. They walked through the broken garden, past a rusted swing set and a shattered sundial. The front door hung at an angle, barely attached to its hinges. Inside, everything was covered in dust and debris. Voldemort came on Halloween night. Gandalf continued. He killed your father first, in the hallway. Your mother ran to protect you. She died on the stairs. Harry closed his eyes. He could almost see it. The flash of green light. The screams. But I survived. You survived. Her love protected you. It created a shield that even Voldemort's curse could not penetrate. And then you came. Yes, and I took you away from all of this. They moved through the cottage slowly, carefully. In the nursery, Harry found the remains of his crib, half buried under plaster and rotted wood. A mobile still hung above it, the figures faded and moth-eaten. He reached into the debris and pulled something out. A small stuffed dog, dirty and ragged but still intact. This was mine. It appears so. Harry held it close to his chest. It smelled of dust and age, but somehow impossibly also of something else. Something warm, something safe. I wish I remembered them. You carry them with you even so. In your eyes. In your spirit. In the very blood that runs through your veins. Gandalf knelt beside him. They would be proud of you, Harry. I am certain of it, really, without question. Harry looked around at the ruined cottage, his ruined home, and for the first time he felt not sadness but determination. I want to learn more, he said, about magic, about fighting, about everything. I want to be ready. Ready for what? Whatever comes. Harry looked up at Gandalf, his green eyes bright and fierce. I won't let their sacrifice be for nothing. I won't let any of this be for nothing. Gandalf studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Very well. Then we have work to do. Befroragimertes. The stones are called Palantir Rai. They were made by the elves long ago, in a time before the world was round. Harry, now 10 years old, sat cross-legged on a hillside as Gandalf paced before him. Dawn was breaking over the misty moors, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. They allow one to see across great distances. But they are dangerous. Look into one without proper training, and you may see things you are not meant to see. Or worse, be seen by things you do not want finding you. Harry nodded seriously. Like Sauron, exactly like Sauron. He has corrupted several of the stones. Anyone who uses them risks drawing his attention. Then why are you telling me about them? Gandalf stopped pacing and looked at Harry with something like approval. Because someday you may encounter one, and when that day comes I want you to be prepared. He reached into his robes and withdrew a small leather pouch. From it he drew a ring. It was made of gold, set with a brilliant red stone that seemed to flicker with inner fire. "This is Narya," Gandalf said. "One of the 3 rings of power, given to me long ago. It grants courage and hope to those who wield it." Harry stared at the ring with wide eyes. "It's beautiful. It is also dangerous. All rings of power are. The greater the power, the greater the temptation to misuse it." Gandalf held the ring out to Harry. "Touch it." Harry hesitated. Then, slowly, he reached out and placed one finger on the stone. Warmth flooded through him. Not physical warmth, but something deeper. He felt brave, strong, like he could face anything. Then Gandalf pulled the ring away, and the feeling faded. "That is what power feels like," Gandalf said. "Wonderful and terrible in equal measure. Remember this, Harry, the ring of power that Sauron forged was far stronger than Narya, strong enough to corrupt even the wisest souls. If you ever encounter it, you must not touch it. You must not claim it, no matter how tempting it seems. I understand. Do you?" Gandalf's eyes were sharp. "I have seen great lords and mighty warriors fall to that temptation. What makes you think you would be any different?" Harry thought about it, really thought. "Because you taught me," he said finally. "Because I know what power can do, and because I'd rather die than become something evil." Gandalf was silent for a long moment. Then he smiled, and it was a smile of genuine warmth. "Perhaps you do understand. I hope so, for all our sakes. Teach Eliak will de Ram." The meeting was tense. Dumbledore sat on one side of the private room, his half-moon spectacles glinting in the candlelight. Gandalf sat on the other, his staff leaning against the wall beside him. Between them, Harry fidgeted nervously. "I must confess," Dumbledore said slowly, "I am astonished. When I placed Harry with his relatives, I believed he would be safe there, protected by his mother's blood. He would have been miserable." Gandalf replied. His voice was calm, but there was iron beneath it. "I watched you leave him on that doorstep, in the cold, with nothing but a letter." Dumbledore's face tightened. "I had reasons. The Blood Wards. The Blood Wards would have protected him from Voldemort's followers. They would not have protected him from the Dursleys themselves." "You cannot know." "I know enough." Gandalf leaned forward. "I know that Petunia Dursley was relieved when I took him." "Relieved, Dumbledore? What does that tell you about the home you chose for him?" Dumbledore was silent for a long moment. Then he looked at Harry. "My boy, are you happy?" Harry glanced at Gandalf, then back at Dumbledore. "I am now." "Sir." Something flickered across Dumbledore's face. Regret? Guilt? Harry couldn't tell. "I see." Dumbledore folded his hands on the table. "And what, may I ask, has Gandalf taught you?" "Lots of things." Harry straightened in his chair. "History. Languages, how to defend myself, how to think. He has learned things no wizard at Hogwarts could teach him," Gandalf added. "But he is still a wizard of his mother's line, bound to the magical world of Britain. He should attend Hogwarts. He should know his heritage. On that, at least, we agree." Dumbledore studied Harry intently. "Do you wish to attend, Harry? The choice must be yours." Harry nodded without hesitation. "I want to learn everything I can, and I want to make friends my own age. Real friends. Then it is settled." Dumbledore rose from his chair. "Harry Potter will attend Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and Gandalf—" He paused as if the words pained him. "Gandalf is welcome to take a position on the staff, as a consultant perhaps, or guest instructor." Gandalf inclined his head. "That would be acceptable. There is one more thing." Dumbledore reached into his robes and withdrew a shimmering silver cloak. "This belonged to your father, Harry. James lent it to me before he died. I have been keeping it safe for you." Harry took the cloak carefully. It was incredibly light, almost weightless. What is it? An invisibility cloak. Quite rare, quite powerful. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled briefly. Use it well? Thank you, sir. The meeting was over. Gandalf and Harry stood to leave. But at the door, Harry paused and looked back. Professor Dumbledore. Yes, Harry. You left me on that doorstep. You walked away. Harry's voice was steady, but his eyes were hard. I'm not sure I can forgive you for that. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Dumbledore's face fell. He suddenly looked very old, very tired. I understand, he said quietly. And I am sorry, more sorry than you can know. Harry nodded once, then followed Gandalf out the door. Plere tifo our armnanda tari to ours. The steam from the Hogwarts Express billowed across the platform, mixing with the noise and bustle of hundreds of families saying goodbye. Harry stood beside Gandalf, his trunk already loaded, his heart hammering in his chest. Well, Gandalf said. This is it. Harry looked up at him. The old wizard's face was calm, but there was something in his eyes that Harry had never seen before. Worry, and something else. Pride. You'll visit, won't you, at school? I will be there more often than you might like. I have agreed to assist with certain classes. Gandalf smiled. You will not be rid of me so easily. Good. Harry hesitated. Uncle Gandalf, thank you for everything. For taking me. For teaching me. He swallowed hard. For being my family. Gandalf knelt so that they were eye to eye. Harry, listen to me carefully. At Hogwarts, you must learn all that you can. Make friends, allies. Trust your instincts. His voice grew serious. But remember, your path is your own. Do not be led blindly by anyone. Not even by Dumbledore. Not even by me. Harry nodded. The darkness we have spoken of is still out there gathering strength. The time may come when you must face it. But that time is not now. For now, be a child. Enjoy your youth. Learn, grow. Live. I will. Good. Gandalf rose and placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. No go, your train is waiting, and I believe I saw a red-headed family looking rather lost near the barrier. Perhaps you might help them find their way. Harry grinned. I'll try. He grabbed his trunk and started toward the train, but after a few steps he turned back. Gandalf was still standing there, his gray robes and pointed hat making him stand out among the crowd of wizards and witches in their dark robes and pointed hats. I love you, Uncle Gandalf. The old wizard's eyes glistened. And I love you, Harry. Never forget that. Harry boarded the train. He found a compartment, pressed his face to the window, and watched as the platform slowly began to slide away. Gandalf raised his hand in farewell, his staff in the other, smoke from his pipe rising to join the steam from the engine. And then they were gone. Speeding north through the English countryside, toward Hogwarts, toward adventure, toward whatever fate had in store. Harry touched the scar on his forehead. It didn't hurt. Not right now. But somewhere out there he knew something was stirring, something old and dark and terrible. And someday he would have to face it. But not today. Today he was 11 years old, and he was going to school, and he was going to make friends, and he was going to learn magic, and everything was going to be brilliant. He smiled and leaned back in his seat, watching the world rush by outside the window. The adventure was just beginning. The castle looked like something out of a fever dream. Harry pressed his face against the window of the small boat, watching Hogwarts grow larger and larger against the night sky. Towers and turrets, glowing windows, a bridge that seemed to hang in midair. It was beautiful, magnificent, and yet something about it made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. He had seen Rivendell. He had walked the halls of dwarven kingdoms carved into living stone. But this place felt different. Older, somehow, despite being younger. There was magic here, layer upon layer of it, built up over centuries until it practically dripped from the walls. And beneath it all something else. Something that made his scar itch.
First years! This way! Don't dawdle!
The boats bumped against a stone dock, and Harry climbed out with the rest of the students. A stern woman in emerald robes was waiting for them, her lips pressed into a thin line that suggested she had dealt with far too many 11-year-olds in her lifetime. "I am Professor McGonagall. Follow me." They followed. Up staircases that moved when you weren't looking, through corridors lined with portraits that whispered and pointed, past suits of armor that Harry could have sworn turned their heads to watch him pass. And then they were standing in front of two enormous wooden doors, and Professor McGonagall was explaining something about houses and points and honor, and Harry wasn't really listening because he was too busy trying to figure out why his scar wouldn't stop tingling. "Potter. Harry Potter." He blinked. McGonagall was staring at him expectantly. "Sorry." "Yes. I asked if you were paying attention." "Yes, Professor." "Houses. Points. Don't embarrass Hogwarts." A few students snickered. McGonagall's lips twitched like she was fighting a smile. "Close enough. Now then, the sorting ceremony is about to begin." The doors swung open. Harry had thought he was prepared. Gandalf had described this room to him. 4 long tables, floating candles, an enchanted ceiling that showed the sky outside. He was not prepared. The sheer scale of it hit him like a physical force. Hundreds of students, all staring at the line of first years filing in, teachers at a high table at the far end, and above them all, a ceiling that wasn't a ceiling at all but an endless expanse of stars and clouds that made you feel like you might fall upward if you looked too long. But what caught Harry's attention was the figure sitting at the staff table between a hook-nosed man in black robes and a tiny wizard who looked like he might blow away in a strong wind. Gandalf. The old wizard was wearing his usual gray robes and pointed hat, which looked distinctly out of place among the darker, more formal attire of the other professors. He was puffing on his pipe, seemingly unconcerned by the stares he was attracting, and when his eyes met Harry's, he gave a small nod. Harry felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. Whatever happened here, he wasn't alone. "When I call your name," McGonagall announced, "you will sit on the stool and place the sorting hat on your head." A hat. They were being sorted by a hat. Harry watched as student after student walked up, sat down, and had a ratty old hat dropped onto their heads. The hat would twitch, think, and then shout out a house name.
Granger Hermione.
A girl with bushy brown hair practically ran to the stool. Harry recognized her from the train. She had come into his compartment looking for a toad, stayed for an hour talking about books, and left only when she remembered she was supposed to be looking for a toad. The hat sat on her head for nearly a minute before shouting, "Gryffindor." Hermione beamed and hurried to the cheering table on the left. More names, more sortings. Harry's stomach was starting to hurt. "Potter." "Harry." The whispers started immediately. "Potter." Did she say Potter? The Harry Potter? The one who survived you-know-who? Harry walked to the stool on legs that didn't feel entirely connected to his body. He sat down. The hat dropped over his eyes, blocking out the staring faces. And then a voice was in his head. Well, what have we here?" Harry jumped. The hat chuckled. "Don't be alarmed, boy. I'm just having a look around, trying to figure out where you belong." There was a pause. Difficult. Very difficult." "What's difficult?" You're difficult." The hat sounded almost offended. "Plenty of courage, I see. Good mind, too. Loyalty. Determination. All the houses would be happy to have you. So pick one. If only it were that simple." Another pause, longer this time. "There is a light in you, boy, but also a shadow. Something older than this school. Older than me, even." The hat's voice dropped to a whisper. "And there's a song in your heart. An ancient song. Elvish, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't heard that language in over 1,000 years." Harry's blood went cold. "You know about—" "I know many things. I am the sorting hat, but your secrets are safe with me." The hat seemed to settle more firmly on his head. "Now then, where to put you?" "Not Slytherin, I think. That shadow in you might find too much company there. Not Ravenclaw either. Your thirst for knowledge is practical, not academic. Hufflepuff would suit you in some ways, but no. No, I think there's only one place for you." Harry held his breath.
Gryffindor.
The word echoed through the hall. The Gryffindor table exploded in cheers. Harry pulled off the hat and handed it back to McGonagall, who was looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. He walked to the Gryffindor table on shaky legs and dropped onto the bench next to Hermione Granger. "Well done," she said brightly. "The hat took ages with you. What did it say?" "Nothing important." Hermione looked like she wanted to press the issue, but the sorting was continuing, and she was quickly distracted by the next name called. Weasley. Ronald, a tall, gangly boy with red hair and a face full of freckles, stumbled to the stool. The hat barely touched his head before shouting,
Gryffindor.
and Ron Weasley came to sit on Harry's other side, his face flushed with relief. "Blimey, I was terrified," Ron muttered. "All my brothers were in Gryffindor. Fred and George would never have let me live it down if I'd ended up somewhere else." "You did fine. Easy for you to say. You're Harry Bloody Potter." Ron grinned suddenly. "Hey, we met on the train, right? You shared that weird bread with me." "What was that stuff?" "Lembas Elvish waybread." "Elvish." Ron's eyes went wide. "Like actual elves, not house elves. Different kind of elves. It's complicated." Ron looked like he had about 100 more questions, but the sorting was ending and Dumbledore was standing up to speak.
Welcome.
The headmaster's voice carried easily through the hall. "Welcome to a new year at Hogwarts. Before we begin our feast, I have a few announcements. First, the Forbidden Forest is as always forbidden, Mr. Filch has asked me to remind you that magic is not permitted in the corridors between classes. And finally, I am pleased to introduce our new defense against the dark arts professor, Gandalf the Grey." Gandalf rose and gave a small bow. There was scattered applause, but mostly confused murmuring. "Who's that?" someone whispered. "Never heard of him. Why's he dressed like that? Looks like he wandered in from a muggle play." Harry ignored the whispers. He was watching Dumbledore and Gandalf, trying to read the dynamic between them. Dumbledore's smile was pleasant but fixed. Gandalf's expression was unreadable. "Now then," Dumbledore said, clapping his hands. "Tuck in." Food appeared on the tables. Mountains of it. Roast beef and chicken and potatoes and pies and things Harry didn't even have names for. Ron immediately began shoveling food onto his plate like he hadn't eaten in weeks. "This is amazing," Ron said through a mouthful of potatoes. "Best part of Hogwarts, the food." Hermione wrinkled her nose. "Don't talk with your mouth full. Don't tell me what to do." Harry smiled despite himself. He had spent most of his childhood around adults, Gandalf, Bilbo, Elrond and his people. He had almost forgotten what it was like to be around kids his own age. It felt nice. THTRAI, and earlier that day, things had been very different. Harry had boarded the Hogwarts Express alone, found an empty compartment, and settled in with a book. The book was written in Sindarin, one of the Elvish languages, and it was a history of the great wars of the First Age. Light reading for an 11-year-old. He was 3 chapters in when the compartment door slid open and a red-haired boy poked his head in. "Mind if I sit here? Everywhere else is full. Go ahead." The boy came in and sat across from Harry, looking relieved. "Thanks. I'm Ron, by the way. Ron Weasley. Harry Potter." Ron's jaw dropped. "You're Harry Potter?" "The Harry Potter, blimey. I thought you'd be I don't know, bigger or something. Sorry to disappoint." No, I didn't mean." Ron's face went red. "It's just, you're famous, aren't you? The boy who lived and all that. Everyone knows your name." Harry shifted uncomfortably. He knew about his fame in the wizarding world. Gandalf had explained it to him, but hearing it from someone his own age made it feel different. More real. "I don't really remember any of it," he said. "I was just a baby." "Still, you survived you know who. That's mental, I suppose." An awkward silence fell. Ron kept glancing at Harry's forehead, obviously looking for the scar. Harry fought the urge to cover it with his hand. "So," Ron said finally, You want some sweets? My mum made me sandwiches, but they're corned beef and I hate corned beef. He held up a sad-looking sandwich. Harry felt a pang of sympathy. Actually, I've got something better. He reached into his bag and pulled out a leaf-wrapped bundle. It's called lembas, elvish bread. One bite fills you up for hours. Ron looked skeptical but took a piece. He bit into it. His eyes went wide. Bloody hell, that's good.
What'd you call it? Limbas? Lembas.
A friend taught me how to make it. A friend. Ron was already reaching for another piece. What, like a house elf? No, a different kind of elf. It's kind of a long story. Ron shrugged. We've got hours. Train doesn't get there till evening. So Harry told him. Not everything, but enough. About Gandalf taking him in as a baby. About growing up in strange places with strange people. About learning magic that wasn't quite like the magic they taught at Hogwarts. Ron listened with his mouth hanging open. That's the maddest thing I've ever heard, he said when Harry finished. And I've got twin brothers who once turned my teddy bear into a spider. Nearly gave me a heart attack. You're afraid of spiders. Terrified. Don't tell anyone. Harry smiled. Secret's safe with me. The compartment door opened again. This time it was a girl with bushy brown hair and a bossy expression. Have either of you seen a toad? A boy named Neville's lost one. No toads here, Ron said. Just us. The girl was about to leave when she spotted the book in Harry's lap. Her eyes went wide. Is that Elvish? Actual Elvish? Where did you get that? A friend gave it to me. Can you read it? What does it say? It's a history of wars that happened a long time ago in a place far from here. Hermione Granger sat down without being invited and peppered Harry with questions for the next hour. What were the Silmarils? Who was Fëanor? Why did the elves leave Middle-earth? Harry answered as best he could. Ron looked bored and eventually fell asleep. This is fascinating, Hermione said finally. I've never read about any of this in Hogwarts, a history, or any other book. You wouldn't. It's not from this world. Hermione stared at him. What do you mean? Not from this world. I mean exactly what I said. Harry closed the book. There are other places. Other realms. This isn't the only world that exists. Hermione opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. That's impossible. Is it? You're a witch, you can do magic. Is other worlds really harder to believe than that? Hermione had no answer. She sat there in stunned silence until she suddenly remembered the toad she was supposed to be looking for and hurried out of the compartment, promising to find Harry later so he could tell her more. Ron woke up. She gone?
Yeah, thank Merlin. She's mental, that one.
She's curious. There's a difference, Ron shrugged. If you say so. Want to play Exploding Snap? Phi Rs Telesons. The first week of classes was both fascinating and frustrating. Fascinating because the magic they taught was different from what Gandalf had shown him. Wand movements and incantations and careful, precise techniques that turned simple actions into art forms. Professor Flitwick made a feather float with such elegance that Harry felt like a child banging rocks together. Frustrating because most of it was so basic. In Transfiguration, they spent 3 lessons trying to turn matches into needles. Harry had been changing small objects since he was 7. In herbology, they learned about the properties of common plants. Harry had been trained in herb lore by elves who remembered when the forests were young. But the class Harry was most looking forward to was defense against the dark arts. Gandalf's classroom was on the 3rd floor, at the end of a corridor that smelled faintly of smoke and something else. Something older. When Harry walked in for his first lesson, he found the room transformed. The walls were covered in maps and charts. Not of Britain or Europe, but of places that looked nothing like any geography Harry had seen in his textbooks. There were weapons mounted above the blackboard. Swords, axes, a bow that seemed to glow faintly in the torchlight. And at the front of the room, Gandalf sat in a high-backed chair, puffing on his pipe. Sit down, all of you, quickly now. The first years scrambled for seats. Harry took one near the back, next to Ron and Hermione. He didn't want to seem like he was getting special treatment. Gandalf waited until everyone was settled. Then he stood, and his presence seemed to fill the room. "Defense against the dark arts," he said slowly. "A grand name for a simple concept. You are here to learn how to protect yourselves, how to fight back against the darkness that exists in this world and others." He moved to the blackboard and began drawing symbols, runes. Harry recognized them from his studies. "Can anyone tell me what these are?" Hermione's hand shot up. "They look like ancient runes, sir. But they're not quite right. The patterns are different." "Very good, Miss Granger, sir." "Miss Granger, you are correct that these are runes, but they are not the runes you will learn in Ancient Runes class. These are older. They come from a place called Middle-earth, and they have power that your standard protective charms cannot match." Murmurs rippled through the classroom. Draco Malfoy, a pale boy with slick-back hair, raised his hand. "Professor, my father says there's no such place as Middle-earth. He says it's just a Muggle story." Gandalf's eyes glittered. "Does he now? And what else does your father say?" "He says you're probably a fraud. No one's ever heard of you." The room went silent. Harry's hands clenched under his desk. He knew that look on Gandalf's face. It was the same look he got when someone said something particularly foolish. "Mr. Malfoy." Gandalf's voice was soft, dangerous. "I have walked in places your father cannot imagine. I have seen things that would turn his hair white and his mind to jelly. I have fought battles against creatures that would make your precious pure blood freeze in your veins. And I have been doing so for longer than your family has existed." He stepped closer to Malfoy's desk. The boy shrank back. "So when your father says I am a fraud, you may tell him this Gandalf the Grey does not answer to little men with large opinions. Now, shall we continue with the lesson, or would you like to share more of your father's wisdom?" Malfoy said nothing. His face had gone the color of old cheese. "Good." Gandalf returned to the front of the room. "Now then, these runes are defensive wards. They can protect against creatures of shadow and flame. Things that your standard shield charm would not even slow down. Who would like to try drawing one?" The rest of the lesson was unlike anything Harry had experienced in a classroom. Gandalf taught with a combination of lectures, demonstrations, and stories. He told them about barrow wights, undead creatures that lurked in burial mounds; about wargs, giant wolves with intelligence and malice; about things that lived in the deep places of the world, where light never reached. By the end of the hour, most of the students looked pale and shaken. Hermione had filled 6 pages of notes. Ron looked like he was going to be sick. "Blimey," Ron muttered as they left the classroom. "That was intense." "That was amazing," Hermione countered. "I've never heard of half those creatures. I need to go to the library." "Of course you do." Harry said nothing. He was thinking about the lesson, yes, but also about the look Gandalf had given him as he left. A look that said they needed to talk. Soon, Nagakchimaris, the dream started on the 3rd night. Harry was walking through a barren landscape. The ground was black and cracked. The sky was red, like the world was bleeding. And in the distance, a tower rose from the earth, dark and terrible, its peak lost in clouds of smoke and ash. He didn't want to walk toward it, but his feet kept moving anyway. The tower grew larger, closer, and at its top something was watching, something huge and made of fire. "And I, Harry." The voice was like rocks grinding together, like the earth itself was speaking. "I see you." The eye focused on him. Harry felt it pierce through his skin, through his bones, down to the very core of his being. It knew him. It knew everything about him, his fears, his hopes, his secrets. "You cannot hide from me, little one. You bear my mark." Harry looked down. His scar was glowing. Not the faint pulse he was used to, but a brilliant, burning light that hurt to look at. "You will come to me. In the end, they all come to me," Harry screamed. He woke up in his 4-poster bed in Gryffindor Tower. his sheets soaked with sweat, his scar throbbing like it had been branded fresh. His scream was still echoing off the walls. Ron was at his side in an instant. "Harry, what's wrong?" "Nothing." Harry was gasping for breath. "Bad dream." "That's all. That wasn't just a bad dream, mate. You were screaming bloody murder." Ron's face was pale in the moonlight. "Was it you-know-who? The dreams about him?" Harry shook his head. "No, it was, something else." Dean Thomas and Seamus Finnegan were awake now too, peering at Harry from their beds. "You all right, Potter?" Dean asked. "Fine. Sorry for waking everyone." He lay back down, but he didn't sleep. He stared at the canopy of his bed and tried to slow his racing heart. The eye, the voice, the feeling of being seen, really seen by something vast and ancient and evil. This was different from his childhood nightmares. Those had been fragments, echoes. This felt direct, personal, like Sauron had finally found him. "Lamarar, you need to tell Gandalf," Hermione said firmly. They were in the library, tucked into a corner behind towering shelves of dusty books. Harry had told her and Ron about the dream, about all the dreams, about the scar and what it meant. "I know," Harry said. "I will. But first I want to understand what's happening." "Why now? Why is it getting worse?" "Maybe it's because you're here," Ron suggested. "At Hogwarts, I mean. Loads of magic in this place. Maybe it's, I dunno, amplifying things." "That's actually a reasonable theory," Hermione said, sounding surprised. "Don't sound so shocked." Harry ignored them. He was flipping through a book he had found in the restricted section. He hadn't technically been given permission to access the restricted section, but Gandalf had taught him how to move quietly and the librarian had been distracted. "Listen to this," he said. "The Palantiri, also known as the Seeing Stones, were created by the elves in the First Age and given to the men of Numenor. 7 great stones existed, allowing communication and sight across vast distances. However, after the fall of Numenor and the defeat of Sauron, several of the stones were lost or corrupted." "What's a Palantir?" Ron asked. "It's like a crystal ball, but much more powerful. If you look into one, you can see things happening far away. But if you're not careful—" Harry trailed off, reading ahead. "If you're not careful, someone else might see you back." Hermione leaned over his shoulder. "Does it say anything about Hogwarts?" Harry scanned the page. "There's a reference here. It says that one of the stones was rumored to have been brought to Britain by early magical settlers. The text is unclear, but it suggests it might have been hidden in a fortress in the north of the country." "A fortress in the north," Ron repeated slowly. "Like a castle." They looked at each other. "You don't think—" Hermione started. "There's a Palantir at Hogwarts," Harry finished. "That would explain a lot. Why my dreams are getting stronger. Why I felt something when I arrived. The stone might be reacting to the mark on my scar. Or maybe you're both mental, and there's a perfectly normal explanation," Ron said hopefully. Nobody believed that, not even Ron. Halloween, the troll came on Halloween. Harry had been dreading Halloween since he arrived. It was the anniversary of his parents' death, the night Voldemort had attacked. The night everything had changed. He hadn't told anyone. He didn't want the sympathy, the pitying looks. So he sat at the Gryffindor table during the feast, pushing food around his plate, trying to ignore the laughing and celebrating all around him. Ron noticed. "You all right?"
"Mate, fine?"
"You don't look fine." I said I'm fine. Ron held up his hands. Okay, just asking." Hermione wasn't at the feast. Harry had noticed her absence but hadn't asked about it. Apparently, she had been upset about something and had been crying in the girls' bathroom for hours. He felt bad about that. He should have checked on her. But his own grief was taking up too much space in his chest. The doors of the Great Hall burst open. Professor Quirrell came running in, his turban askew, his face white with terror.
"TRL!"
he screamed.
"TRLIT-DMGOs!"
He collapsed in a dead faint. Chaos erupted. Students screaming, tables overturning, food flying everywhere. Dumbledore's voice cut through the panic like a knife.
sense.
Everyone froze. Prefects, lead your houses back to the dormitories. Teachers, with me to the dungeons. Students began filing out, but Harry grabbed Ron's arm. Hermione. She doesn't know about the troll. Ron's face went pale. The bathroom, she's in the bathroom. They didn't discuss it. They just ran. The corridors were chaos. Students pushing and shoving. Prefects shouting instructions. Harry and Ron ducked through the crowd, heading for the first-floor girls' bathroom. The smell hit them first, like a sewer had exploded. Then the sound, grunting, crashing, stone breaking. They rounded a corner and stopped dead. The troll was huge, 12 feet tall at least, with gray-green skin and tiny stupid eyes and a club the size of a small tree. But that wasn't what made Harry's blood run cold. This wasn't a normal troll. He knew it the moment he saw it. The runes carved into its skin, the dull red glow in its eyes, the way his scar suddenly erupted in pain. This was something from Middle-earth. A cave troll. One of Sauron's creatures, and it was between them and the bathroom door. Hermione screamed from inside. The troll turned toward the sound, raising its club.
Oi, UGLY!
Ron grabbed a piece of broken stone and hurled it at the troll's head. The creature turned, snarling. Harry didn't think. He ran forward, past the troll, through the bathroom door. Hermione was pressed against the far wall, her face white with terror. The sinks were smashed. The stalls were splinters. Water was everywhere. Harry, what's happening? What is that thing? No time to explain. We need to get out of here. The troll was pushing through the doorway now, its massive shoulders barely fitting. Ron was behind it, looking like he was about to pass out. Harry's mind raced. Spells. He needed spells. But everything Gandalf had taught him seemed to have fled his brain, except Hermione. Do you remember the rune Gandalf showed us? The one for warding? The yes, but I don't have any chalk and…
USYURN.
Hermione's eyes went wide. But she understood. She dropped to her knees and began tracing the rune on the wet floor with the tip of her wand, speaking the words of activation. The troll lunged. Harry threw himself to the side. The club smashed into the ground where he'd been standing, cracking the stone. Narin Adrath Ammon. The words came from somewhere deep inside Harry. Elvish. Fire to save us. Gandalf had taught him years ago, in case of emergencies. Fire erupted from his wand, not much. Not enough to hurt a creature this big, but enough to make it flinch. To buy them seconds, Ron appeared in the doorway. His face was set in a look of terrified determination. Wingardium Leviosa. The troll's club flew out of its hands and hovered in the air. Ron's wand was shaking. His face was red with effort. Harry, now. Harry grabbed a piece of broken pipe from the wreckage of the sinks. It wasn't a sword. It wasn't even close to a sword, but it was metal and it was sharp and it would have to do. He ran at the troll. The creature was still confused, reaching for its floating club. Harry drove the pipe into the back of its knee with all his strength. The troll roared. Its leg buckled. It crashed to the ground just as Hermione finished the rune. Light blazed from the floor. The rune activated, sending a wave of energy that slammed into the troll and held it there, pinned like a bug on a board. It worked, Hermione breathed. It actually worked. Ron let the club fall. It crashed to the ground with a sound like thunder. Is it dead? No. Harry was panting, his hands shaking, his scar screaming. Just stunned. We need to go now. Before it wakes up. They ran. They nearly crashed into Gandalf in the corridor. The old wizard took one look at them, at the blood on Harry's hands, at the terror in their eyes, and his face went very still. The bathroom. Harry gasped. Save Troll. We stopped it, but Gandalf was already moving. Behind him came Snape and McGonagall and Quirrell, all looking various shades of alarmed. Stay here, Gandalf ordered. All three of you. Do not move. He disappeared into the bathroom. There was a flash of light, a roar that shook the walls, then silence. Gandalf emerged. His robes were singed. His face was grim. It is dealt with. He looked at Harry. You used Elvish fire speech. I didn't know what else to do. And you, he turned to Hermione. The warding rune. I taught that in class just last week. I remembered it. Hermione's voice was shaking. I didn't know if it would work. It worked. It worked very well indeed. Gandalf's expression softened slightly. All three of you showed courage tonight. And teamwork, that is no small thing. McGonagall had arrived now, her face pale. What happened here? These three students saved themselves and each other from a cave troll, Gandalf said. An impressive feat for first years. A cave troll. McGonagall looked at the bathroom door, then back at the students. That's not... We don't have cave trolls in Britain. No, you don't. Gandalf's eyes met Harry's. A silent message passed between them. This was not an accident. Someone had let this creature into the school. Someone who knew what it was, what it meant. The war was coming to Hogwarts. After our MH, the next few weeks were tense. The official story was that a mountain troll had somehow gotten into the school and been subdued by the teachers. Harry, Ron, and Hermione were given points for alerting the staff and told not to discuss it further. But Harry knew the truth, and now so did his friends. They gathered in the common room late at night. After everyone else had gone to bed, the fire had burned down to embers. Outside, rain pattered against the windows. So let me get this straight, Ron said slowly. There's a Dark Lord. A really, really old Dark Lord. Older than you know who. And he's what? Coming back? Gathering strength, Harry corrected. He was defeated a long time ago but not destroyed. And somehow I'm connected to him. Through my scar. Because of Voldemort's attack. Maybe. Or maybe it was always there. Gandalf isn't sure. Hermione was taking notes. Of course she was taking notes. And this Dark Lord, Sauron, he's from another world.
Yes.
And the troll tonight was from Middle-earth too.
Yes.
So someone is, what? Summoning creatures from another dimension to attack students. It looks that way. Ron slumped back in his chair. Blimey. And I thought having Fred and George as brothers was bad. Hermione closed her notebook. We need more information. If there's a Palantir at Hogwarts, we need to find it. If someone is summoning creatures, we need to figure out who. We need to be careful, Harry said. Gandalf told me that Sauron can sense people through the Palantir. If we find the stone and touch it, he might see us. Then we don't touch it, we just find it. Figure out where it is and tell the professors. Ron snorted. Yeah, because that worked so well with the troll. We told Quirrell and look what happened. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe we can't trust all the professors. Ron's voice dropped. Did you see Snape tonight? The way he was looking at Harry, like he wanted to murder him or something. Professor Snape is unpleasant, but I don't think he's evil. Hermione said primly. Don't be thick, Hermione. The bloke's clearly got it out for Harry. That doesn't mean he's working for some ancient Dark Lord from another dimension. Will you two stop? Harry rubbed his eyes. Look, we don't know who we can trust, so we trust each other. The three of us, we investigate. We're careful. And when we find something solid, we go to Gandalf. Ron and Hermione looked at each other. Then they nodded. All right, Ron said. We're in. Absolutely. Hermione agreed. Harry felt something warm spread through his chest. He had spent his whole life with adults, with beings who had lived for centuries. But somehow these two ordinary magical kids, made him feel less alone than he had in years. Thank you, he said quietly. Don't get sappy on us, Potter. Ron grinned. We've got a mystery to solve. Palantir, they found it 3 months later. It had taken countless nights of sneaking through corridors. Dozens of close calls with Filch and his cat. Hours spent poring over old maps and older books in the restricted section. But finally, they found it. The Room of Requirement, Harry would learn later, was a magical space that appeared when you needed it most. But that night, he just called it that weird door that wasn't there before. It appeared on the 7th floor, across from a tapestry of trolls learning ballet. One moment the wall was blank. The next, there was a door. Harry pushed it open. The room inside was small and dusty. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling. The only furniture was a single pedestal in the center, and on that pedestal sat an orb. It was black, perfectly black, like a hole in the world. But as Harry approached, he could see something moving inside it, shapes, colors. Darkness that wasn't quite dark. "Is that it?" Ron whispered. "The Palantir." "Don't touch it." Hermione grabbed Ron's arm before he could reach out. Harry said, "It's dangerous." "I wasn't going to touch it. I was just looking." Harry stood frozen. The orb was calling to him. He could feel it, a pull in his chest, in his scar. It wanted him to look, to see, to be seen. "We should go," he said. "Tell Gandalf. Let him deal with it." "Harry's right." Hermione was already backing toward the door. "This is beyond us." But Harry's feet weren't moving. The pull was getting stronger. His hand was rising, reaching toward the stone, and he couldn't seem to stop it. "Harry." Ron's voice was distant, far away. "Harry, what are you doing?" His fingers touched the surface of the Palantir. Cold, so cold, like plunging into ice water. The room vanished. The world vanished. There was only darkness. And then the eye. It filled his vision. Burning. Made of fire and malice and hate. It saw him. It knew him. "You have come to me at last." The voice was everywhere. Inside him. Around him. Through him. "Little bearer of my mark. Little child of two worlds." Harry tried to pull away, but he couldn't move. He was trapped. Frozen. "I have watched you grow. Watched the old fool try to prepare you. Did he think he could hide you from me? Did he think his pathetic protections would keep you safe?" Images flashed through Harry's mind. Privet Drive. The Shire. Rivendell. All the places he had thought were safe. Sauron had seen them all. "You belong to me, boy. You have belonged to me since the night your parents died. The peace of the lesser Dark Lord that lodged in your soul, it calls to me. Yearns for me. We are bound, you and I." "Nope." Harry didn't know if he spoke aloud or only in his mind. "I don't belong to you. I never will." Laughter. Terrible laughter that shook the foundations of everything. Such spirit, such fire. It will make your eventual submission all the sweeter. Pain exploded in Harry's scar. He screamed, "I will find you, Harry Potter. I will break you. And when I am done, you will serve me willingly, just as all the others have served. Just as all the others will serve." The eye moved closer. Harry could feel its heat, its hunger. "This world, your world, my world, all worlds will fall before me. And you, little child, will watch it happen from my side. Begone." The word tore out of Harry with a force he didn't know he possessed. Black speech. The language of Mordor. He had heard Gandalf speak it once, in a lesson about the depths of evil, and somehow the word had lodged in his memory. The eye recoiled. Just for a moment. Just long enough. Harry ripped his hand away from the Palantir. The connection shattered. The world came flooding back. He was on the floor. Hermione was screaming his name. Ron was trying to pull him away from the pedestal. The Palantir was cracked, dark smoke pouring from the fissure.
"Harry!"
"Harry, are you all right?" He couldn't answer. He was shaking too hard. His scar felt like it was on fire. The door burst open. Snape stood there, his face twisted with fury. Behind him, Gandalf. "What have you done?" Snape snarled. "What have you done?" But Harry couldn't speak. He could only lie there trembling, as the reality of what had just happened crashed over him. Sauron knew. He knew everything. Where Harry had been. What he had learned. Who he loved. And he was coming. Trh Gandalf took Harry to his office while Snape dealt with Ron and Hermione. The walk was silent. Harry couldn't seem to make his legs work properly. Gandalf had to support him most of the way. The office was warm. A fire burned in the grate. Gandalf settled Harry into a chair and handed him a cup of something that smelled like flowers and tasted like courage. "Moreover," Gandalf said. "Elvish cordial. It will help." Harry drank. The shaking slowly subsided. The fire in his scar cooled to a dull throb. Gandalf pulled up a chair and sat across from him. His face was tired, old in a way Harry had never seen before. "Tell me what you saw." Harry told him. Everything. The eye, the voice, the images of his past, the threat of what was to come. When he finished, Gandalf was silent for a long moment. "I had hoped to spare you this," he said finally. "I had hoped that by keeping you safe, by training you slowly, I could prepare you without exposing you to the full weight of what you face. I needed to know." "Yes, you did, and now you do." Gandalf leaned forward. "Harry, listen to me carefully. Sauron is the Dark Lord of Mordor. Long ago he was defeated, his power broken, his physical form destroyed. But he was not killed. He cannot be killed, not while the One Ring exists. The ring. You told me about it. I told you it was dangerous. I did not tell you it was the source of Sauron's power. If he reclaims it, he will rise again. Fully, completely. And all the worlds will fall before him." Harry's stomach churned. "And I'm connected to him. Because of my scar." "Yes. The piece of Voldemort's soul that lodged in you that night. It resonates with Sauron's darkness. They are not the same, but they are similar enough. Two Dark Lords, two fragments of evil. And you carry echoes of both. Can it be removed?" "The connection?" Gandalf's face was sad. "I do not know. Perhaps, but not easily. And not safely." Harry looked at his hands. They were still shaking slightly. "What do I do now?" "Now?" Gandalf smiled gently. "Now you rest, you recover. You continue your studies, and you let me worry about Sauron. I can't just pretend this didn't happen. I am not asking you to pretend. I am asking you to trust. You are not alone in this fight, Harry. You never have been. You never will be." Harry nodded slowly. The moreover was making him drowsy. The warmth of the fire was seeping into his bones. "Your friends?" Gandalf continued. "Ron and Hermione. They proved themselves tonight. They did not abandon you. They did not flee. That kind of loyalty is rare, precious. Hold on to it." "I will." "Good." Gandalf rose and helped Harry to his feet. "Now, to bed. You have classes tomorrow, and I suspect Professor McGonagall will not accept visions of the Dark Lord as an excuse for late homework." Despite everything, Harry laughed. DAW and Harry stood at the window of Gryffindor Tower, watching the sun rise over the mountains. He hadn't slept. His mind was too full. But somehow, he didn't feel tired. He felt clear, focused, like a sword that had been sharpened. Sauron knew about him. Sauron was hunting him. The war that Gandalf had been preparing him for was not some distant possibility anymore. It was here, now, and somehow that was almost a relief. No more wondering, no more waiting. The enemy had shown himself. Now Harry could fight. The door opened behind him. Ron and Hermione came in looking rumpled and worried. "We couldn't sleep either," Hermione said. "Snape gave us detention for a month," Ron added, "and took about 1,000,000 points from Gryffindor. But we don't care." "Are you all right, Harry?" Hermione's eyes were red. She had been crying. "When you touched that thing, you just froze, and then you screamed."
I thought, I'm all right, really.
Harry turned from the window. "I saw him." "Sauron, he showed me things, told me things he wants me to be afraid." "And?" Ron asked. Harry looked at his friends. His first real friends. The boy who had shared sandwiches on a train, and the girl who couldn't stop asking questions. They were scared. He could see it in their faces. But they were still here. "I'm not afraid," he said. "Not anymore. He thinks he can break me. He thinks he can make me serve him. He's wrong." "How do you know?" Harry smiled. It felt strange on his face. Sharp and dangerous. "Because I'm not fighting alone. I've got the best friends in any world, the wisest mentor in any age. And I've got something Sauron will never understand." "What's that?" Harry touched his scar. It tingled, but it didn't hurt. Not anymore. Hope. Outside, the sun cleared the mountains. Light flooded into the tower, pushing back the shadows, painting everything gold. The war was coming. The darkness was gathering. But dawn had broken over Hogwarts, and Harry Potter was ready. The letter arrived at breakfast on a Tuesday. Harry was eating toast and trying to ignore the whispers that still followed him everywhere when a great gray eagle swept through the windows of the great hall. Not an owl. An eagle. the size of a small horse, with golden eyes and feathers that gleamed like polished steel. Every conversation stopped. Every head turned. The eagle landed on the Gryffindor table directly in front of Harry, scattering plates and sending pumpkin juice everywhere. Ron yelped and fell backwards off the bench. Hermione just stared, her mouth hanging open. Bloody hell, someone whispered. Is that thing real? The eagle fixed Harry with those golden eyes and spoke. Actually spoke, in a voice like wind through mountain passes. Harry Potter, Gandalf the Grey summons you. The time has come. Then it was gone, back out the windows and into the sky, leaving behind a table full of spilled food and a hall full of shocked students. Harry looked at his friends. They looked back at him. Well, Ron said from the floor, that's new. Gandalf's Sauron's forces are moving. Gandalf stood by the window, his face grave. Outside, dark clouds were gathering despite the forecast of clear skies. Harry sat in the chair across from him, with Ron and Hermione flanking him on either side. Moving where? Harry asked. Everywhere. Reports have reached me from Rivendell, from the Rangers of the North, from Mirkwood and Lothlorien, and even the distant east. Gandalf turned to face them. The Nazgul ride again. Sauron's orcs mass in Mordor, and the One Ring has been found. The words hit Harry like a punch to the gut. Found. Where? In the Shire. Of all places. Gandalf almost smiled, but there was no humor in it. A hobbit named Frodo Baggins has carried it to Rivendell. Bilbo's nephew. Do you remember Bilbo? Of course I remember Bilbo. Harry had spent years at Bag End. Bilbo had been like a grandfather to him. He had the ring this whole time? He did. He found it decades ago, in the caves beneath the Misty Mountains. He did not know what it was. None of us did until recently. Gandalf sighed heavily. But now Sauron knows. He has been searching, and he will not stop until he reclaims what is his. Hermione leaned forward. What does this mean? For Harry, it means we must leave. Tonight. Hogwarts is no longer safe, and my presence is needed in Middle-earth. Gandalf looked at Harry with something like sorrow in his eyes. A council is being held at Rivendell to decide what must be done with the ring. Harry should be there. His connection to Sauron, however unwanted, gives him insight that others lack. You want him to go to another world. Ron's voice cracked. Just like that. I want him to have a choice. Gandalf knelt so he was at eye level with all three of them. Harry, you have trained for this. You have prepared. But I will not force you. If you wish to stay here, to continue your studies, to let others fight this battle, I will not blame you. Harry didn't hesitate. I'm coming. Harry, wait. Hermione grabbed his arm. Think about this. You're 11 years old. This is a war. A real war with armies and monsters and... I know what it is. Harry's voice was steady. I've always known this was coming. Gandalf told me years ago. I'm not going to hide while other people die fighting the thing that's attached to my soul. Then I'm coming too. Everyone stared at Ron. What? He shrugged, trying to look casual despite the fear in his eyes. You think I'm going to let my best mate wander off to another dimension without me? Mum would kill me. Ron, this isn't a game. Hermione's voice was sharp. People die in wars. Real people. Forever. Yeah, I know. I'm not stupid. Ron's jaw set stubbornly. But Harry's my friend. And friends don't abandon each other. Not when it matters. Hermione opened her mouth, closed it, then she let out a long breath. Fine. Then I'm coming too. Hermione, don't even try to talk me out of it. She was already pulling out a notebook. Someone needs to keep you two idiots alive. And besides, the chance to see another world, to study magic that's never been documented. I'd be insane to pass that up. Gandalf watched this exchange with an unreadable expression. When they finished, he nodded slowly. Very well. The three of you will accompany me, but understand this: once we leave, there is no guarantee we will return. The road ahead is dark and dangerous. Many who walk it will not see its end. We understand, Harry said. And he did. He really did. Then pack lightly. We leave at midnight. Teach Pordell they gathered in the Forbidden Forest at the stroke of 12. Dumbledore was there, looking older than Harry had ever seen him. McGonagall stood beside him, her face tight with worry. Hagrid was openly crying, great tears rolling down his cheeks into his beard. "Are you sure about this?" Dumbledore asked. His eyes were fixed on Harry. "There are other ways, safer ways." "There is no safe way," Gandalf replied. "Not anymore. Voldemort can wait. If Sauron rises, nothing in this world or any other will survive." Dumbledore flinched at that. He nodded once sharply. "Then may fortune favor you. All of you." He looked at Ron and Hermione. "Your families have been notified," they objected, of course, strenuously. "But they understand the necessity. Mum's going to murder me," Ron muttered. "If you survive," Hermione pointed out. "Thanks for that." Gandalf raised his staff. The air in front of him began to shimmer, like heat rising from summer pavement. Colors swirled and twisted, forming a doorway of light that hurt to look at directly. "Through here lies Rivendell," Gandalf said, "the last homely house east of the sea. Stay close, do not stray from the path, and whatever you do, do not look back." He stepped through the portal and vanished. Harry took a deep breath. He looked at his friends. They looked back at him, pale and scared but determined. "Ready?" "No," Ron said. "Absolutely not," Hermione agreed. "Good. Let's go." They stepped through together. Rivendell, the world exploded into color. Harry had been to Rivendell before, as a child, but he had forgotten how overwhelming it was. The light was different here, softer, golden. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, filtering through leaves that were every shade of red and orange and gold. Waterfalls cascaded down distant cliffs, their mist catching the light and throwing rainbows across the valley. Buildings rose from the landscape like they had grown there, all graceful curves and delicate arches. And everywhere, there was music. Faint and distant but always present, a song that seemed woven into the very air. Ron was making a sound like a dying animal. "Blimey," he finally managed. "Blimey, blimey, blimey." "It's beautiful." Hermione's voice was barely a whisper. Her eyes were wet. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." "Welcome to Imladris," Gandalf said, in the common tongue Rivendell, home of Elrond, half-elven and refuge of the last great elven kingdom in Middle-earth. They were standing on a stone terrace overlooking the valley. Below them, elves moved along winding paths, their voices carrying faintly on the breeze. Above them, the sky was impossibly blue, dotted with clouds that seemed placed there by an artist's hand.
"Harry!"
A figure was hurrying toward them. Tall and slender, with long dark hair and a face that was both ancient and ageless. He wore robes of silver and blue, and his eyes held the light of stars. Lord Elrond. Harry found himself smiling despite everything. "It's good to see you again." Elrond embraced him briefly, something Harry had not expected. "And you, young one. Though I wish it were under better circumstances." He turned to Ron and Hermione, who were staring at him with their mouths open. "These are the friends Gandalf spoke of, Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger." Harry introduced. "They insisted on coming. Then they are brave beyond measure. Welcome to Rivendell, both of you. Any friend of Harry's is welcome in my house." Elrond extended his hand. Ron shook it awkwardly. Hermione tried to curtsy, stumbled, and turned bright red. "My lord, I've read about you," she stammered. "In the books Harry showed me. You're thousands of years old. You fought in the War of the Last Alliance. You've seen the rise and fall of kingdoms. All true." Elrond's smile was kind. "And yet I still forget where I put my reading glasses. Age brings wisdom, but not always practicality." Ron laughed, then looked horrified at himself for laughing at an ancient elf lord. Elrond's smile widened. "Come, there are others who wish to meet you. And the council begins at dawn." Felador's Shipe, the council chamber, was an open terrace carved into the side of a cliff. Stone benches formed a half-circle around a central pedestal, and on that pedestal sat a small golden ring. Harry felt it the moment he entered. A pull, a whisper. The same dark presence he had felt through the palantir, but quieter, more insidious. His scar throbbed. "Don't look at it," Gandalf murmured. "Don't let it draw you in. Focus on the people, not the object." Harry forced his eyes away from the ring and studied the assembly instead. Urin sat at the head, grave and still. Beside him was an old hobbit that Harry recognized with a jolt of affection. Bilbo, wizened and gray, but with the same twinkling eyes Harry remembered from childhood. He gave Harry a tiny wave. Around the circle sat representatives of all the free peoples. Elves in silver and gold, dwarves in leather and mail, men in travel-worn cloaks. And on a bench near the back, looking pale and overwhelmed, was a young hobbit who could only be Frodo Baggins. Frodo looked terrified and exhausted, and somehow, despite being fully grown, impossibly young, Harry understood completely. "Strangers from distant lands," Urin began, his voice carrying easily across the terrace. "Friends of old, you have been summoned here to answer the threat of Mordor. Middle-earth stands upon the brink of destruction. None can escape it. You will unite or you will fall." He gestured to the ring on its pedestal. "Each race is bound to this fate, this one doom. Bring forth the ring, Frodo." The young hobbit rose on shaky legs and approached the pedestal. The ring was already there, placed by Elrond for all to see. Frodo stared at it with a mixture of longing and dread that made Harry's stomach turn. "So it is true," someone muttered. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, with a proud face and haunted eyes. "The Ring of Power. I had thought it a legend." "It is no legend, Boromir." Urin's voice was cold. "I was there 3,000 years ago, when Isildur cut it from Sauron's hand. I was there when he refused to destroy it. I have seen firsthand what this ring can do." The man, Boromir, leaned forward. "Then let us use it against him. Turn the enemy's weapon against him. With the ring's power, Gondor could." "It cannot be used," Gandalf interrupted. "The ring answers to Sauron alone. Anyone who wields it will be consumed by it, their will bent to his purpose. There is no bending it to good ends. There is only corruption and darkness and ultimately slavery." "Then what do you suggest?" "That we throw away the only weapon that could save us." "I suggest," Gandalf said slowly, "that we destroy it." Silence fell over the council. "Destroy it?" Boromir laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The ring cannot be destroyed by any craft we possess. I have read the histories. The fires of Dragonflame could not touch it. The greatest smiths of the elder days could not unmake it. There is one way." Elrond rose from his seat. "The ring was forged in the fires of Mount Doom. Only there can it be unmade. It must be taken deep into Mordor, cast into the crack of doom, and destroyed once and for all." More silence. Then Boromir spoke again. "One does not simply walk into Mordor. Its black gates are guarded by more than just orcs. There is evil there that does not sleep. The Great Eye is ever watchful. It is a barren wasteland, riddled with fire and ash and dust. The very air you breathe is a poisonous fume. Not with 10,000 men could you do this. It is folly. Then what would you have us do?" a dwarf demanded. He was stocky and fierce, with a great red beard and an axe that looked like it had seen considerable use. "Sit here and wait for Sauron to come to us. Hide in our holes until the darkness covers everything."
"I would have us fight."
"As men, with honor, using every weapon at our disposal." "The ring is not a weapon." Gandalf's voice thundered across the terrace. "How many times must I say this? It is a trap, a poison, a disease that destroys everything it touches. There is no wielding it safely. There is no using it. There is only surrender to its evil or destruction." The argument continued. Voices rose and fell. Accusations flew. Harry sat quietly, watching, feeling the ring's presence pulsing in the back of his mind like a second heartbeat. He understood now why Gandalf had brought him. He could feel what the others could not. The ring's hunger, its mendless, patient desire to return to its master. It had to be destroyed. There was no other option. Finally, in a lull in the shouting, a small voice spoke up. "I will take it." Everyone turned. Frodo stood before the pedestal, his face pale but resolute. "I will take the ring to Mordor, though I do not know the way." Gandalf closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them, they were bright with unshed tears. "I will help you bear this burden, Frodo Baggins, as long as it is yours to bear." He moved to stand beside the hobbit. The dwarf jumped up.
And my axe.
"If we're doing this fool thing, I'll not let an elf show me up." An elf, tall and fair with hair like spun gold, stood as well. "And my bow. The elves will not abandon Middle-earth in its darkest hour." More joined. The man called Aragorn, who had been sitting quietly in the shadows. Boromir, reluctantly. Two more hobbits who burst from behind some bushes shouting about not being left behind. And then Harry stood. "I'm coming too." The council turned to stare at him. The elf's eyes narrowed. The dwarf looked him up and down skeptically. "Who is this boy?" Boromir demanded. "Why is a child at this council?" "This child," Gandalf said quietly, "has survived an attack from a Dark Lord. He bears a scar that connects him to Sauron himself, and he has shown more courage in 11 years than many warriors show in a lifetime." "I don't need your protection, Gandalf." Harry stepped forward, feeling the weight of every eye on him. "Sauron knows about me. He spoke to me through a palantir. He said we were bound. I need to understand that connection, and I need to fight it." "Your children," Boromir said. But his voice had lost some of its scorn. "All three of you. So was Frodo once." Harry met the man's eyes steadily. "Age doesn't determine courage." "He's right." Hermione stood up, her voice trembling but clear. "We've trained for this. Harry's been preparing his whole life, and we're not going to let him face this alone." Ron stood too. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He just moved to stand beside Harry, his face set in stubborn determination. Elrond studied them for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Very well. 11 companions, so be it. You shall be the Fellowship of the Ring." Ios. The next 3 days were a blur of activity. Rivendell's smiths fitted them with light armor. The elves provided cloaks that seemed to shift color with their surroundings. Weapons were selected and tested. Food was packed. Plans were made and remade. Harry found himself training with Aragorn, the ranger who had pledged his sword to Frodo's cause. The man was quiet and intense, with a presence that commanded respect without demanding it. "You handle a blade well," Aragorn observed after their second session. "Better than most boys your age. Gandalf started teaching me when I was 6. Harry wiped sweat from his forehead. "And the dwarves helped when I was older." "The dwarves?" "In the Blue Mountains. Gandalf took me there to learn combat. They said I had a warrior's spirit." Aragorn smiled slightly. They were not wrong. But technique is not everything. In battle, fear can unmake the strongest swordsman. Have you ever killed someone, Harry? The question hit like a blow. "No. You may have to. Before this quest is done." Aragorn's eyes were kind but serious. "Are you prepared for that?" Harry thought about the troll at Hogwarts. The way its blood had looked on his hands. The way he had felt afterward, shaking and sick. "I don't know," he admitted. "I hope so." An honest answer. Better than false confidence. Aragorn clapped him on the shoulder. "Remember this, there is no shame in fear, only in letting it rule you." Meanwhile, Hermione had essentially moved into Rivendell's library. She spent every waking moment poring over ancient texts, asking questions of any elf who would speak to her, filling notebook after notebook with observations and translations. "Did you know that elven magic is completely different from what we learn at Hogwarts?" she said excitedly over dinner one night. "They don't use wands at all. Their power comes from their connection to the world itself, to the music of the Ainur that created everything." "That's great, Hermione," Ron said through a mouthful of bread. "Don't talk with your mouth full. And look at this." She shoved a page of notes at him. "Their healing arts could revolutionize magical medicine. Athelas alone has properties that our healers have never even dreamed of." "Still can't understand a word you've written." Harry smiled at their bickering. Some things never changed, no matter which world you were in. On the third night, he found Frodo sitting alone by a fountain, staring at the water. "Mind if I join you?" Frodo looked up. His face was drawn, his eyes shadowed. "Please." Harry sat down beside him. For a while, neither spoke. "You know what it's like, don't you?" Frodo said finally. "To carry something dark inside you, something that doesn't belong." Harry touched his scar. "Yeah, I do. Does it ever get easier? The feeling that you're contaminated somehow, that you'll never be clean again?" "I don't know. Maybe. I try not to think about it most of the time." Harry looked at the smaller boy. "But I know one thing. The darkness doesn't define us. What we do with it does." Frodo's laugh was bitter, easy to say, harder to believe. "I didn't say it was easy. Nothing about this is easy." Harry put a hand on Frodo's shoulder. "But you're not alone. None of us are. That's the whole point of this fellowship thing, right? We carry the burden together." Frodo looked at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he smiled. "You know, for an 11-year-old, you're remarred from the wisest." The were begins. They left Rivendell on a grey morning, 9 companions walking into an uncertain future. The hobbits led the way. Frodo with the ring hidden beneath his shirt, his face pale but determined. Sam Gamgee beside him, solid and dependable, carrying enough provisions for twice their number. Merry and Pippin behind, trying to look brave and mostly succeeding. Then the men. Aragorn, hood-drawn up, eyes scanning the horizon. Boromir, still skeptical but committed, his shield catching the weak sunlight. The elf, Legolas, moved like he was walking on air. The dwarf Gimli stomped along like he was trying to leave footprints in solid rock. Gandalf led from somewhere in the middle, his staff clicking against stones, his presence a comfort to everyone around him. And at the back, Harry and his friends. Ron was struggling with his pack. "Why did I bring so many socks?" "I don't need this many socks." "Because you have horrible feet," Hermione said. "I've smelled them." "That was one time. And it was a hot day." Harry let their bickering wash over him. It was familiar, grounding, a reminder that despite everything, despite dark lords and magic rings and journeys across worlds, some things stayed the same. They walked for hours. The path wound through forests and over hills, along river banks and across stone bridges that looked like they had been there since the world was young. The landscape was beautiful, but there was an edge to it, a sense of watching, of waiting. By nightfall, they had covered perhaps 20 miles. They made camp in a hollow sheltered by great pine trees, building a small fire and sharing out food. "How far to Mordor?" Ron asked, chewing on a piece of dried meat. "Further than you can imagine," Aragorn said. "And through lands that grow more dangerous with every step." "Lovely." Gimli was sharpening his axe by the firelight. "Don't let the boy discourage you, lad. I've walked harder roads than this, and fought nastier things than we're likely to meet." "Like what?" "Orcs, mostly. Goblins, a troll or two." The dwarf's eyes glinted. "Once, a pack of wargs cornered me and my cousin in a mountain pass. Killed 6 of the beasts before they decided we weren't worth the trouble." "Wargs." Ron's eyes went wide. "What's a warg? Giant wolves?" Harry said. "Intelligent, vicious. Gandalf told me about them." "Great. Giant intelligent wolves. Add that to the list of things trying to kill us." Legolas, who had been keeping watch at the edge of the camp, suddenly went still. Something apron tensed. Weapons appeared in hands. The fire seemed to dim. Aragorn was on his feet, sword drawn, south, moving fast, not trying to hide. A moment later, Harry heard it too. Footsteps. Running footsteps. And a voice? "Please wait." A figure burst from the tree line and collapsed at the edge of their camp. It was a man, thin and ragged, his clothes torn and his face bloody. Aragorn was beside him in an instant, checking for wounds. "Who are you? What happened?" "Nazgul," the man gasped. "Black Riders. They attacked our village, killed everyone. I ran. Ran for days." "Where is this village?" "South, near the Weather Hills." The man grabbed Aragorn's arm. They're looking for something, asking about hobbits, about a ring. The fellowship exchanged looks. They know, Gandalf said quietly. Sauron knows the ring has left Rivendell. He's sent his servants to find it. Then we need to move faster, Boromir said. Get as far from here as possible before they pick up our trail. No, Gandalf shook his head. We cannot outrun the Nazgul. Not in the open. We need to take a different path. What path? Gandalf was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy. There is a way through the misty mountains, a road that none would think to watch. But it is not without its own dangers. What road? Gimli demanded.
The mines of Moria. The dwarf's face lit up. Moria, the great dwarven city.
My cousin Balin went there years ago to reclaim it. Yes, he did. Gandalf's tone made everyone pause. And we have heard nothing from him since. Silence fell over the camp. What's in Moria? Ron whispered to Harry. I don't know exactly, but Gandalf's scared of it. And Gandalf doesn't scare easily. Carash-Ras, they tried the mountain pass first. Caradraz, the elves called it, the Cruel, a peak that seemed to claw at the sky with fingers of ice and stone. The path wound up its face, narrow and treacherous, exposed to winds that cut like knives. 3 days they climbed, 3 days of freezing cold and howling wind and snow that seemed determined to bury them alive. Harry had never been so cold in his life. His fingers were numb. His lips were cracked. Every breath was a struggle against the thin air and the ice crystals that seemed to form in his lungs. Ron was worse. His teeth chattered constantly. His skin had taken on a blue tinge. He stumbled every few steps, and only Hermione's grip on his arm kept him upright. We have to turn back, Boromir shouted over the wind. He was carrying both Merry and Pippin now, one under each arm. The halflings will die. The children will die. We all will. The pass is our only way forward, Gandalf shouted back. We cannot. A sound cut him off, a rumbling from above. Harry looked up and saw a wave of white descending toward them.
Hey,
He didn't remember the next few seconds clearly. Someone grabbed him. The world turned white. There was cold, impossible cold, and darkness, and the sensation of being crushed from all sides. Then he was being pulled out, gasping, into gray light and relative warmth. The fellowship had survived barely. They huddled together in a shallow cave, shivering and shell-shocked. The mountain is hostile, Legolas said. I can feel its anger. Something has turned it against us. Saruman. Gandalf's face was grim. He has been corrupted. Turned to Sauron's cause. He is using his power to seal the pass. Then what do we do? Harry asked. His voice came out as a croak. Gandalf looked at him, looked at all of them, and Harry saw something in his eyes that he had never seen before. Fear. We'll go through Moria, and the entrance to Moria was a cliff face beside a dark lake. The water was perfectly still, reflecting the gray sky like a mirror of black glass. The doors of Durin, Gandalf muttered, running his hands over the stone, made by the elves in the days of friendship between our peoples. But the password, can you not remember it? Legolas asked. Give me time. They waited. The wind whispered across the lake. Something rippled in the water, far from shore, and was still. Harry felt the wrongness of this place immediately. It was like standing at the edge of a grave. The air smelled of old death and older things. His scar was throbbing in a slow, steady rhythm that matched the pulse of the water. I don't like this, Hermione whispered. Something's watching us. You feel it too? Harry kept his voice low. It's in the lake. Something big. Ron had gone pale. Can we not go in the lake? Can that be a rule? No one goes in the lake. Gandalf was still muttering, trying different words in different languages. Nothing worked. Frodo had wandered to the water's edge. He was staring at the doors, his brow furrowed. It's a riddle, he said suddenly. The inscription. Speak friend and enter. It's not asking for a password. It's asking you to say the word for friend. Gandalf went still. Then he laughed, a genuine laugh of pure delight. Melon. The doors began to glow. Lines of silver traced themselves across the stone, forming patterns of trees and stars. And then, with a grinding of ancient mechanisms, they swung inward. Darkness waited beyond. Darkness and silence and a smell like nothing Harry had ever encountered. Rotten metal and something else. Something that made his stomach clench. "Quickly now," Gandalf said, "before we are noticed." They filed through the doors. Harry was near the back, helping Ron, who was still shaky from the mountain. He heard a splash behind him and turned. Something was rising from the lake, something with too many arms and eyes that gleamed with malevolent intelligence. It was massive, filling the space between water and sky like a nightmare made flesh. Oh! The tentacle came out of nowhere. It wrapped around Ron's ankle and yanked him off his feet. Ron screamed a high, terrified sound that cut right through Harry. Row! Harry didn't think. He grabbed Ron's hands and pulled, but the thing was stronger. Much stronger. Ron was being dragged toward the water, toward the creature that was rising higher and higher from the depths. "Hermione, help!" Hermione was there, wand out. Diffindo! The curse sliced through the tentacle. Ron fell free, scrambling backwards. But more tentacles were coming, reaching for all of them, wrapping around pillars and stones and anything they could grip. Legolas was firing arrows. Boromir was hacking with his sword. Aragorn pulled Frodo toward the doors. "Inside! Everyone inside now!" they ran. Harry half carried Ron through the doors, Hermione right behind them. The tentacles followed, smashing against the stone, bringing down chunks of the cliff face. The doors slammed shut. There was a terrible rumbling, a crash that shook the ground, and then silence. Total darkness. "Eyes everyone all right?" Gandalf's voice came from somewhere ahead. Voices answered, all accounted for. Harry found Ron in the darkness and gripped his shoulder. "You okay?" "Define okay." Ron's voice was shaking. "That thing nearly killed me. It was slimy and cold, and it had so many arms." "Harry, so one are alive. That's what matters." Light bloomed. Gandalf's staff glowed with a soft white radiance that pushed back the shadows and revealed what surrounded them. "Oh no," Gandalf breathed. Bodies. Everywhere bodies. Dwarven bodies, armored and armed but long dead. Arrows protruded from shields. Swords were broken. And sprawled across the floor, dozens upon dozens of them, lay the remains of Moria's inhabitants. Gimli made a sound that was half sob, half roar. He dropped to his knees beside one of the bodies, his hands shaking. "Balin," he choked. "Cousin, we cannot stay here," Gandalf said gently. "The mines are deep and the way is long. We must move." "But I know, Gimli, I know, but we will honor them best by surviving, by completing our quest. Their deaths will mean something if we succeed." The dwarf was silent for a long moment. Then he stood, his face hard as the stone around them. "Let's go. The sooner we're through this cursed place, the better." They walked into the darkness of Moria. Thdeeps. For 2 days they traveled through the mines. The darkness was absolute except for Gandalf's staff and the occasional pale glow of phosphorescent fungi. The silence was worse. A silence so complete that Harry could hear his own heartbeat echoing off the walls. They slept in shifts, huddled together for warmth, jumping at every sound. There were noises in the deep, scraping and clicking, and once far away what sounded like drums. "Doom," went the sound. "Doom. What is that?" Hermione whispered. "Orcs," Aragorn said grimly. "Warning drums. They know we're here." "Then why haven't they attacked?" "They're waiting, building their numbers." His hand rested on his sword. "When they come, they'll come in force." On the 3rd day they found Balin's tomb. It was a chamber filled with pale light from a shaft far above. In the center stood a stone coffin, and on the coffin was carved a name that made Gimli weep. "Here lies Balin, son of Fundin, Lord of Moria." "So he is dead," Gandalf said quietly. "It is as I feared." There was a book beside the tomb, huge and leather-bound. Gandalf picked it up and began to read, his face growing paler with each word. "They have taken the bridge and the second hall. We have barred the gates but cannot hold them for long. The ground shakes. Drums, drums in the deep. His voice dropped to a whisper. We cannot get out. A shadow moves in the dark. We cannot get out. They are coming. The last word hung in the air, and then they heard them. Drums, drums in the deep, growing louder, coming closer. They're coming, Harry said. Positions. Aragorn drew his sword. Protect the hobbits. The door burst open. Orcs poured through, screaming and snarling, their weapons raised. Behind them, bigger shapes. Goblins with crossbows, and something larger still, pushing through the doorway. Something that made the ground shake with each step. A cave troll. The battle was chaos. Harry found himself back to back with Ron, spells flying from his wand, desperately trying to hold off the tide of enemies. Hermione was beside them, her face set in concentration, casting shield after shield that deflected arrows and blades. Legolas's arrows sang through the air. Gimli's axe rose and fell with terrible efficiency. Aragorn and Boromir held the door, cutting down orcs as fast as they came. And Gandalf was everywhere, his staff blazing, his sword flashing, ancient words of power tumbling from his lips. The cave troll charged. Harry saw it coming and threw himself aside just in time. The creature's club smashed into the floor where he'd been standing, cracking the stone. Stupefy. His spell bounced off the troll's hide like a pebble off a wall. Harry, down! Ron's voice. Harry dropped. A massive axe swept over his head, wielded by Gimli, and buried itself in the troll's leg. The creature roared. It swung wildly, catching Gimli and sending him flying. Then it turned toward Frodo, who was backed against the wall, frozen with terror. No, Harry didn't think. He ran forward, grabbed a fallen spear, and drove it into the troll's back with all his strength. The creature screamed. It spun, one massive arm catching Harry across the chest and throwing him into a pillar. He hit the stone hard, felt something crack, and slid to the ground gasping. Through blurred vision, he saw Aragorn take the troll down, saw the last of the orcs fall, saw Hermione running toward him, her face white with fear. "Harry! Harry! Are you all right?" he wheezed. "Just winded. You're bleeding, your ribs might be broken. Then fix them." He struggled to sit up. "What can't stay here? More are coming." She was right about his ribs. 3 of them, cracked or broken. She did what she could with a basic healing spell, binding them tight so he could move. It hurt. Everything hurt. But Harry forced himself to his feet. "We need to go," Gandalf said. "Now? Before something worse arrives." Worse. Ron looked like he might be sick. "What's worse than that?" As if in answer, a sound echoed through the mines. Not drums this time, something deeper. Something that made the walls tremble and the air go thick with heat. Gandalf's face went white. "Run." Brige. They ran through corridors that blurred together, down stairs that seemed endless, across chasms spanned by crumbling bridges. Behind them, the sound grew louder, closer, and then they saw it. Fire. Living fire, taking the shape of something vast and terrible. Wings of shadow and a body of flame. Eyes like burning coals and a whip that cracked with the sound of worlds ending. "A Balrog," Gandalf breathed. "A demon of the ancient world. This foe is beyond any of you." "Run!" They ran. The bridge of Khazad-dûm stretched before them, narrow and broken, spanning a chasm that seemed to have no bottom. One by one they crossed, Harry helping Ron, who could barely walk, Hermione supporting one of the hobbits. Gandalf came last. He turned on the bridge, staff in one hand, sword in the other. The Balrog approached, each step shaking the stone, its heat washing over them in waves. "You cannot pass." Gandalf's voice echoed through the cavern, filled with power Harry had never heard before. "I am a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Anor." "You cannot pass!" "The dark fire will not avail you, flame of Udon." The Balrog roared. It raised its whip. Gandalf raised his staff. The whip cracked. Gandalf's staff blazed. For a moment, the two powers hung in balance, fire against light, ancient evil against ancient good. "Will you sail pass?" Gandalf brought his staff down on the bridge. There was a sound like the world breaking. The stone beneath the Balrog's feet crumbled, and the demon fell, roaring, into the abyss. For one moment, Harry dared to hope. Then the whip lashed out. It caught Gandalf around the ankle and pulled. Gendalf! Harry screamed. He tried to run forward, but Aragorn caught him, held him back. Gandalf clung to the edge of the broken bridge, his fingers white against the stone. His eyes met Harry's. "Fly, you fools!" And then he was gone, falling into the darkness with the Balrog, until even the light of his staff disappeared. Harry screamed again, and again. He fought against Aragorn's grip, fought to get to the bridge, to follow, to do something. Anything.
Harry, stop! He's gone! No! No, he can't be! He can't be!
Strong arms dragged him away from the bridge, out of the mines, into the gray light of day. He collapsed on the rocks outside, sobbing, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Gandalf was gone. The wizard who had raised him, who had taught him, who had loved him like a father. Gone. Around him, the Fellowship wept. Gimli howled his grief to the uncaring sky. The hobbits clung to each other. Even Boromir's eyes were wet. Hermione knelt beside Harry, pulling him into her arms. Ron was there too, his hand on Harry's shoulder, his own face streaked with tears. "He can't be gone," Harry whispered. "He can't." But he was, and nothing would ever be the same. They made it a mile from the gates before Aragorn called a halt. "We cannot stop for long. Lothlorien is our only hope now. We must reach the Golden Wood before nightfall. How can you think about moving?" Harry's voice was raw, broken. "How can you think about anything?" "Because I must." Aragorn's face was grief-stricken but determined. "Gandalf gave his life for us, for the quest. If we falter now, his sacrifice means nothing." "He's right," Frodo said quietly. The hobbit looked as devastated as Harry felt. "Gandalf would want us to continue. He'd want us to finish what we started." Harry wanted to argue, wanted to scream and rage and break things. But somewhere beneath the grief, he knew they were right. Gandalf wouldn't want him to give up. Gandalf had spent 10 years preparing him for this, for hardship, for loss, for the long fight against darkness. He forced himself to his feet. "Then let's go." They walked in silence. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Beautiful, if Harry could have cared about beauty. Ron fell into step beside him. "I'm sorry, mate. I know what he meant to you." "Yeah, for what it's worth, he was brilliant. The way he stood up to that thing, the things he said." Ron swallowed hard. "I've never seen anything like it. He was the bravest person I ever knew." Harry's voice cracked. "And now he's gone." Hermione took his hand. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. They walked on. Ahead, the trees of Lothlorien rose golden against the darkening sky. A new chapter was beginning. A harder chapter. A chapter without Gandalf to guide them. But they would face it. Together. Harry looked back once, toward the mountains, toward the dark place where Gandalf had fallen. "I won't let you down," he whispered. "I promise." Then he turned and followed his friends into the forest. The quest continued. The Golden Wood closed around them like a dream. Harry walked without seeing. His feet moved on their own, carrying him through trees that glowed with inner light, past streams that sang in voices almost human. He didn't notice any of it. All he could see was Gandalf falling. All he could hear was that last word. "Fly." Someone was holding his hand. Hermione. Her grip was warm and solid, an anchor to the present when everything else felt like it was spinning away. "Harry." Her voice came from far away. "Harry, we need to stop. You need to rest." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. None of us are fine." She squeezed his hand tighter. "Please." He stopped, looked around. The Fellowship had gathered in a clearing carpeted with golden leaves. Everyone looked destroyed. Gimli sat on a fallen log, his head in his hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The hobbits huddled together, faces pale and tear-streaked. Even Legolas, normally so composed, had a haunted look in his eyes. Ron appeared at Harry's other side. He didn't say anything. He just put a hand on Harry's shoulder and left it there. Haldir approaches. Aragorn's voice cut through the silence. Harry turned to see figures emerging from the trees. Elves, tall and stern, with bows drawn and arrows nocked. Their leader stepped forward. Silver hair, silver eyes, a face that could have been carved from ice. "You bring great evil here," Haldir said. His gaze swept over the fellowship and lingered on Frodo. "The ring. We can feel its presence. The lady has been expecting you. Then she knows why we've come." Aragorn replied, "We seek shelter, rest. Our company has suffered a great loss." Haldir's expression didn't change. "Mithrandir's fall is known to us. The lady grieves." For the first time, something almost like sympathy flickered in his eyes. "Come. You will be brought before her." La Hloriam, they climbed. Wooden platforms and rope bridges wound through the massive trees, rising higher and higher until the forest floor was just a distant golden glow. Harry's legs ached. His broken ribs screamed with every movement. But he kept climbing because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering. The city of Caras Galadon spread through the treetops like something out of a fever dream. Lanterns hung from every branch. Music drifted from somewhere distant. Elves passed on bridges and platforms, their faces serene, untouched by the darkness that had swallowed everything Harry knew. He hated them for it. "Just a little. This way," Haldir said. "The Lord and Lady await." The throne room was a platform at the very heart of the city, open to the sky. Moonlight poured down through gaps in the canopy, painting everything silver. And at the center, descending a staircase of living wood, were two figures that made Harry's breath catch. Celeborn was tall and silver-haired, radiating quiet authority. But it was Galadriel who commanded attention. She was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at, with golden hair that seemed to glow from within and eyes that saw straight through flesh and bone to whatever lay beneath. Those eyes found Harry. Found his scar. Found something deeper. "9 there are here," Galadriel said. Her voice was soft but carried perfectly. "Yet 10 there were set out from Rivendell. Tell me, where is Gandalf? For I much desire to speak with him." No one answered. The silence stretched. Finally Aragorn spoke. "He has fallen into shadow." Galadriel closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were bright with unshed tears. "The quest stands upon the edge of a knife. Stray but a little, and it will fail to the ruin of all." Her gaze moved across the fellowship, touching each member in turn. "Yet hope remains while the company is true." She looked at Boromir then. The man flinched as if struck. "Do not let your hearts be troubled. Go now and rest, for you are weary with sorrow and much toil. Tonight you will sleep in peace." They were led to a pavilion near the ground, strung with silver curtains and soft lights. Beds had been prepared. Food waited on low tables. Everything was beautiful and comfortable and utterly meaningless. Harry collapsed onto a bed without removing his boots. He stared at the canopy of leaves above him and felt nothing at all. Grief. He woke to screaming. His own screaming. He was sitting up, drenched in sweat, his scar burning like someone had pressed a hot iron to his forehead. The dream was already fading, but he could still feel it. The fire. The fall. Gandalf's face as he let go. Harry. Ron was beside him, looking scared and exhausted. Behind him Hermione was already moving, a damp cloth in her hand. "Another nightmare," Harry managed. His voice came out as a croak. "I'm fine." "You're not fine." Hermione pressed the cloth to his forehead. It was cool. Soothing. "You've had 3 of them tonight. Your scar is bleeding." He touched his forehead and his fingers came away red. Perfect. Now even his own body was turning against him. "I keep seeing him fall. Over and over." He closed his eyes. "I should have done something. Should have helped him. There was nothing you could do." Ron's voice was rough. "That thing was a bloody demon. Nobody could have fought it. Gandalf did. Yeah, and look what happened." The words hung in the air. Ron's face went pale. "Harry, I didn't mean." "I know." Harry lay back down. "I know what you meant." Hermione sat on the edge of his bed. She looked as tired as he felt, dark circles under her eyes, her hair even more wild than usual. "We're going to get through this," she said quietly. "All of us. Together." That's what Gandalf would want. How do you know what Gandalf would want? Because I knew him. Maybe not as long as you did, but I knew him. She took his hand. He loved you, Harry. Like a son. He wouldn't want you to destroy yourself with grief. Harry didn't answer. He couldn't. The tears he'd been holding back finally broke free, and he cried like he hadn't cried since he was a child. Hermione held him. Ron sat on his other side, awkward but present. And for a while that was enough. Testing, the Lady Galadriel found Harry by the mirror pool the next evening. He had wandered away from the others, needing space, needing quiet. The pool was in a hollow at the base of a great tree, its surface perfectly still, reflecting stars that seemed brighter here than anywhere else in the world. "You carry a great burden, Harry Potter." He didn't jump. Somehow, he had known she was there. "Yeah, I do." Galadriel moved to stand beside him. Up close, she was even more overwhelming. Power radiated from her like heat from a fire. "The scar on your forehead. It binds you to the Dark Lord of Mordor." "I know." "Do you know how deep that binding goes?" Her eyes met his. "Do you know what Sauron sees when he looks through your eyes?" Harry's stomach clenched. He sees my dreams, my memories, the people I care about." "Yes." "And more." Galadriel turned to the mirror pool. "Will you look?" "Ain't what?" "The mirror shows many things, things that were, things that are, things that yet may be." Harry looked at the still water. His reflection stared back at him, pale and haunted. "I don't want to see the future. The present is bad enough. It is not the future I would show you." Galadriel gestured toward the pool. "It is the truth of what you carry." Against his better judgment, Harry leaned forward and looked into the water. At first, he saw only his reflection. Then the surface rippled and images began to form. His parents, young and laughing, in a house he didn't remember. Gandalf carrying a baby through dark streets. The Shire, green and peaceful. Rivendell, the dwarven halls, then darker things. The Palantir, and Sauron's eye burning through it. The Balrog rising from the depths of Moria. Gandalf falling, and then, worst of all, something he had never seen but somehow recognized. A dark tower, a flaming eye, and himself, kneeling before it, a crown of shadow on his head. Harry jerked back from the pool, gasping. What was that? That last part. What was one possible future? Galadriel's voice was gentle, not the only one, but a path that lies before you if you surrender to the darkness in your soul. I would never. Never is a long time. And the ring's power, combined with your connection to Sauron, there are forces at work here that could corrupt even the strongest will. She placed a hand on his shoulder. But I have looked into your heart, Harry Potter. I have seen what lies there. Love, courage, hope. These things are stronger than any shadow if you let them be. Harry swallowed hard. What should I do? Trust your friends. Lean on them when you cannot stand alone. The enemy's greatest weapon is isolation. Do not let him separate you from those who love you. She smiled then, and for a moment she looked almost human. You remind me of another young hero I once knew. He too carried an impossible burden. He too was afraid. But he found the strength to endure. So will you? How do you know? Because I have seen it. In the mirror. Not certain, but possible. The brightest future always begins with the smallest choice. She turned and walked away, leaving Harry alone with the pool and his thoughts. He didn't look in the mirror again. Ron's Testig Ron found the Lady Galadriel without meaning to. He had been walking through the woods, trying to clear his head. Everything here was too beautiful. Too perfect. It made him feel shabby and small. A freckled ginger kid from a crowded house full of hand-me-downs. And then she was there, standing in a clearing like she had been waiting for him. Ron Weasley. Yeah, that's me. She smiled slightly. You are uncomfortable here. Bit, yeah. He rubbed the back of his neck, not really used to all this. The lights and the music and the elves who look like they've never had a bad hair day in their lives. You feel out of place. I feel useless. The words came out before he could stop them. Harry's got his whole destiny thing. Hermione's brilliant. She's learning Elvish and studying healing and probably writing a book about it. And I'm just Ron. I can't do anything special. I'm only here because Harry's my mate. Galadriel studied him with those piercing eyes. You underestimate yourself and your role in what is to come. Do I? Because from where I'm standing, I'm the one who nearly got killed by a lake monster. The one who can barely keep up with everyone else. The one who followed his friend into another world, knowing he might never return. Her voice cut through his self-pity like a knife. The one who fought a cave troll despite his terror. The one who has remained loyal when others might have fled. Ron felt his face go hot. Anyone would have done that. No, they would not have. She moved closer. You have a good heart, Ronald Weasley, but you also have fear. Fear that you are not enough. Fear that your friends will leave you behind. Fear that the people you love will choose each other over you. His stomach dropped. She knew. Somehow, she knew about Harry and Hermione. About the way they looked at each other when they thought no one was watching. About the jealousy that had been growing in his chest like a weed. Will you look into the mirror? I don't think that's a good idea. Perhaps not, but it may show you things you need to see. Against every instinct screaming at him to run, Ron approached the pool and looked. He saw his family, his mum crying, his dad gray and aged, his brothers gathered at a funeral, his funeral. Then the image shifted. He saw himself older, standing in the ruins of Hogwarts, alone. Harry and Hermione were nowhere to be seen. And finally the worst. Harry and Hermione together happy without him, living their lives as if he had never existed. Ron stumbled back from the pool, his heart hammering. That's not going to happen. That can't. The mirror shows possibilities, not certainties. Galadriel's voice was surprisingly kind. What you saw is one path, not the only one, but it could happen. They love you, Ronald, both of them. The question is whether you will let that love sustain you, or whether your fear will poison it. She pressed something into his hand. A small golden dagger, beautiful and deadly. This blade was forged in the First Age. It can cut through deceit and doubt. Use it wisely. She was gone before he could ask what she meant. Ron stood alone in the clearing, staring at the dagger, trying to understand the cold knot of dread that had settled in his stomach. Arioes. Testing, Hermione found the mirror on her own. She had been exploring, because that's what Hermione did. She explored and studied and catalogued, because understanding things made them less frightening. The pool was beautiful. The water was impossibly clear, reflecting stars that seemed to sing when she looked at them. She knew she shouldn't look. Galadriel had warned them about the mirror's dangers, but Hermione had never been able to resist knowledge. She leaned forward. The images came fast. Her parents, obliviated and happy in Australia, not remembering they had a daughter. Hogwarts burning. Bodies in the halls. And then Harry. But not the Harry she knew. This Harry was older, darker, his eyes burning with power that wasn't quite human. He stood at the head of an army of shadows, a ring of gold on his finger, and when he smiled, it was the smile of something wearing her friend's face. No, she whispered. No, that can't. Can it not? Galadriel appeared beside her, silent as smoke. The one you love carries great darkness within him. The lady's voice was soft. The peace of the lesser Dark Lord, the connection to Sauron. If he falters, if he gives in to despair, he could become what you saw. Hermione's eyes stung with tears. I won't let that happen. You may not be able to prevent it. I'll find a way. I always find a way. She turned to face Galadriel. Tell me how to help him. Tell me what I need to do. Galadriel studied her for a long moment. You love him. It wasn't a question. Hermione felt her face heat up. Yes, I do. Then that is your answer. Love is not a weakness, Hermione Granger. It is the strongest magic there is. It protected Harry once when his mother died for him. It can protect him again, if you are brave enough to wield it. How? By being there. By refusing to let him fall. By reminding him who he is when he forgets. Galadriel pressed something into Hermione's hand. A small silver belt, intricately crafted. For courage. You will need it before the end. She vanished, leaving Hermione alone with the mirror and her thoughts. For a long time, Hermione just stood there, watching the water ripple and still. Then she squared her shoulders and walked back to the camp. She knew what she had to do. Reviar, they left Lothlorien a week later. The elves gave them boats, light gray craft that seemed to glide across the water without effort. They also gave them supplies, cloaks that blended with their surroundings, and advice that none of them fully understood. Galadriel's parting gifts were personal. Frodo received a crystal flail filled with light. Sam got a box of elvish rope. Aragorn received a sheath for his broken sword and a look from Galadriel that seemed to say more than words ever could. To Harry, she gave a small silver pendant in the shape of a star. May it be a light to you in dark places, she said. When all other lights go out. He tucked it under his shirt, next to his skin, and felt its warmth against his chest. The Anduin River carried them south. The current was strong, the water cold and gray. On either side, forests gave way to marshes, then to rocky hills that grew taller as they traveled. Harry shared a boat with Hermione. Ron was in another, looking sullen and withdrawn. He had been quiet since Lothlorien, barely speaking to anyone, and Harry was too lost in his own grief to figure out why. Something's wrong with him, Hermione said quietly. They were floating ahead of the others out of earshot. He won't talk to me. Won't even look at me. He's scared. We all are. It's more than that. Ever since we talked to Galadriel, who... She trailed off, frowning. What did she show him, Harry? In the mirror. I don't know. He hasn't said anything. Hermione was silent for a moment. Then she moved closer until her shoulder was touching his. What did she show you? Harry didn't answer immediately. The images were still fresh in his mind. Himself crowned in shadow, kneeling before Sauron. Possible futures, he said finally. Things that might happen. Things I have to make sure don't happen. Bad things. Very bad things. Hermione took his hand. Her fingers were cold from the water. I saw bad things too, but I also saw something else. I saw that we have a choice, that the future isn't fixed. She looked at him, her brown eyes fierce and determined. Whatever comes, Harry, I'm not leaving you. I need you to know that. Hermione, I mean it. I know this is probably the worst possible time to say this, but I don't know if we're going to get another chance, and I need you to understand. She took a deep breath. I love you, Harry. Not just as a friend. I love you. The words hung in the air between them. Harry felt like the world had tilted sideways. Since when? Since always. Since the moment we met, probably? She laughed shakily. I know it's ridiculous. We're in the middle of a war. People are dying. There's no time for... He kissed her. It was clumsy and awkward, and probably the wrong moment, but he didn't care. Her lips were soft, and she tasted like the lembas they had eaten for lunch, and it was the first good thing that had happened since Gandalf fell. When they pulled apart, Hermione's eyes were wide. Oh, she said. Yeah. So you? Yeah. She smiled then, a real smile that lit up her whole face. Good. That's good. Behind them, in one of the other boats, Ron watched with a look on his face that Harry didn't see. A look of pain and jealousy and something darker. Something that had been planted in Lothlorien and was just beginning to grow. THFLS, 3 days later, they reached the falls of Rhoros. The river ended in a massive waterfall that plunged hundreds of feet into a churning pool below. The roar of the water was deafening, drowning out all other sounds. Mist rose from the base of the falls, creating rainbows that danced in the afternoon sun. They made camp on the western shore, in a sheltered cove surrounded by ancient statues. Two massive stone figures flanked the entrance to the river, their hands raised in warning or welcome. "The Argonath," Aragorn said, his voice heavy with emotion. "The pillars of the kings. My ancestors built them long ago." "Your ancestors?" Ron asked. It was the first thing he'd said in days. "He is Aragorn, son of Arathorn," Legolas said. "Heir to the throne of Gondor." Ron's eyebrows shot up. "You're a king." "Not yet." Aragorn turned away from the statues. "And perhaps never. That is a path I am not yet ready to walk." They set up camp in silence. Boromir volunteered to gather firewood. Frodo wandered off alone, as he often did now, one hand pressed to his chest where the ring hung on its chain. The others busied themselves with preparing food and setting watches. Harry found himself sitting with Hermione, their shoulders touching, watching the sun set over the river. They hadn't told anyone about the kiss. There didn't seem to be a right way to bring it up. "We need to decide," Aragorn said, joining them. "The Fellowship must choose its path. East, to Mordor and the fire, or west, to Minas Tirith and the war."
"I thought the choice was already made,"
Hermione said. "Destroy the ring. That's the quest." "The quest, yes. But Boromir argues that we should take the ring to Gondor first. Use it to rally the armies of men against Sauron's forces." "That's insane," Harry said. "The ring can't be used." Gandalf said. He stopped. The name caught in his throat. "I know what Gandalf said." Aragorn's voice was gentle. "But Boromir is not wrong about everything. Gondor is hard-pressed. Without aid, it will fall. And if Gondor falls, there will be no one left to oppose Sauron's armies. So what do? We let Frodo decide. The ring is his burden. The choice must be his." Harry looked across the camp to where Frodo sat alone, staring at the fire. The hobbit looked smaller than ever, crushed beneath a weight that no one should have to carry. "He's going to go east," Harry said quietly. "Straight to Mordor. He won't risk bringing the ring anywhere near Gondor." "You seem certain." "I know what it's like. To carry something dark inside you. To know that every moment you hesitate is a moment it could take control." Harry touched his scar. "He'll want to end this as quickly as possible, before it's too late." Aragorn studied him for a long moment. "You are wise beyond your years, Harry Potter." "I had a good teacher." The ranger nodded and moved away, leaving Harry and Hermione alone with their thoughts. "It's going to happen soon, isn't it?" Hermione whispered. "The Fellowship is going to break apart." "Probably. And then what?" Harry took her hand. "Then we figure it out, together." Boromir's Farrell. It happened the next morning. Harry was helping Sam pack up the cooking supplies when he heard shouting from the woods. Boromir's voice, angry and desperate, and Frodo's, high and frightened. Something's wrong. He was running before he finished speaking, through the trees over rocks, following the sounds of the argument. He found them in a clearing, Boromir looming over Frodo, reaching for the chain around the hobbit's neck.
"Give me the ring, Frodo!" "No, Boromir, please, you don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm saving my people."
"With the ring? I could—" Boromir's eyes were wild, glazed with a madness that wasn't entirely his own. "Give it to me." Frodo stumbled backwards. His hand found the ring, and then he was gone, vanished like he had never existed. The Boromir froze, the madness drained from his eyes, replaced by horror. "What have I done?" He fell to his knees. "What have I done?" Harry approached carefully. "Boromir, I tried to take it." The man's voice cracked. "I tried to take the ring from him. After everything we've been through. After all my promises." He looked up at Harry with tears streaming down his face. "The lady was right. She saw this in me, saw the weakness. It's not your fault."
"The ring? Don't make excuses for me."
Boromir slammed his fist against the ground.
"I am a warrior of Gondor."
"I should be stronger than this. I should." A horn sounded in the distance, then another, and then Harry heard something that made his blood run cold. Screaming. Orcs screaming. Techi Pang. They came out of the forest like a tide of death. Not orcs. Something worse. Uruk-hai, Saruman's creatures. Taller than men, stronger than trolls, with skin like leather and eyes that burned with hate. They carried crude swords and axes and bows, and they were everywhere. Harry's wand was in his hand before he consciously reached for it. Stupfi, the spell hit the lead Uruk and did nothing. The creature didn't even slow down. Reducta, that worked better. The Uruk exploded backwards, taking 2 of its companions with it. But more were coming, always more.
Harry, behind you!
He spun, and Uruk was swinging a massive sword at his head. He ducked, felt the blade whistle past his ear, and drove his wand into the creature's eye. Incendio! The Uruk screamed and fell. Harry was already moving, looking for his friends, trying to find some order in the chaos. Ron was fighting back to back with Gimli, swinging a sword he'd picked up somewhere. Hermione was casting shield charms, protecting a cluster of hobbits who were throwing rocks and anything else they could find. Legolas was a blur of motion, arrows flying faster than Harry could track. And Aragorn was cutting a path through the enemy like a force of nature, his sword leaving a trail of bodies in his wake. But there were too many. For every Uruk that fell, 2 more took its place. They were being overwhelmed. Fail a feu! Aragorn's voice cut through the noise. Prates! Falba! Harry grabbed Hermione's arm and pulled her toward the river.
We need to get to the boats.
Where's Frodo? I don't see Frodo. Harry looked around frantically. The hobbit was nowhere to be seen. Neither was Sam. They must have run when the attack started. We need to. An arrow whistled past his head. He threw himself to the ground, pulling Hermione with him. When he looked up, he saw the archer already drawing another arrow. Pertugo. The shield charm caught the arrow, but it shattered on impact. These weapons were stronger than anything at Hogwarts. Confringo, the blasting curse hit the archer and sent it flying. Harry scrambled to his feet.
Ah!
Ron! O-U. A scream. Not orc. Human. Harry ran toward the sound and found Ron on the ground, an arrow in his shoulder, blood soaking through his shirt. An Uruk stood over him, sword raised for the killing blow. No. Harry didn't think. He didn't aim. He just reacted. Air. The green light hit the Uruk square in the chest. The creature dropped like a puppet with its strings cut. For a moment, Harry just stood there, staring at what he had done. He had used the killing curse. He had killed, not a troll or a cave creature, but a living, thinking being. Then Ron groaned and Harry's paralysis broke.
Hermione!
Hermione, Ron's how? She was there in seconds, dropping to her knees beside Ron. The arrow's deep. I need to remove it, but if I do it wrong, just do it. She pulled. Ron screamed. Blood gushed from the wound, but Hermione was already chanting healing spells, her wand tracing complex patterns over the injury. It's not enough. I need proper supplies. I need Hermione. Harry's voice was hollow. Look. Across the battlefield, Boromir was dying. The man stood in a clearing, surrounded by Uruk bodies bristling with arrows. 3, 4, 5 of them protruding from his chest and shoulders. But he was still fighting, still swinging his sword, still standing between a horde of enemies and the hobbits he had sworn to protect. Until he wasn't. The 6th arrow took him in the heart. Boromir fell to his knees. His sword dropped from his fingers. The Uruks closed in, and then they stopped. A horn sounded, deep and commanding. The Uruks turned and ran, disappearing into the forest as quickly as they had come. The battle was over. Aragorn reached Boromir first. Harry arrived moments later, Hermione supporting Ron between them. I tried to take the ring, Boromir was saying. His voice was wet with blood. I tried to take it from Frodo. I betrayed you all. You fought for us, Aragorn said. In the end. That is what matters. The little ones. Are they safe? Aragorn looked around. Merry and Pippin were nowhere to be seen. The Uruks took them. Legolas reported, emerging from the trees. They are heading north, toward Isengard. Then I have failed. Tears leaked from Boromir's eyes. I have failed everyone. You have not failed. Aragorn gripped the dying man's hand. "You are a warrior of Gondor. You will be remembered as such." Boromir's eyes found Harry. "The boy, Harry, keep him safe. He carries a burden almost as great as the ring." His breath rattled. "Do not let the darkness take him." "I won't," Aragorn promised. Boromir smiled. It was a peaceful smile, the smile of a man who had finally found redemption. "My brother, give him my horn. Tell him I died protecting." He didn't finish. His eyes went glassy. His chest stopped moving. Boromir of Gondor was dead. Teach Partgeig, they buried him at the falls. Aragorn laid him in one of the elven boats, hands folded over his sword, shield at his side. They pushed the boat into the current and watched it drift toward the edge, hover for a moment, and then plunge into the mists below. "He was a good man," Aragorn said quietly. "The ring's corruption was not his fault. He tried to take it from Frodo." Ron's voice was bitter. His arm was in a sling, hastily bandaged, his face pale from blood loss. He nearly gave in to a temptation that would have destroyed anyone. Aragorn turned to face them. "Do not judge him too harshly. The ring finds the weakness in all of us." Legolas approached. "Frodo and Sam are gone. I found tracks leading to the eastern shore. They have crossed the river and are heading for Mordor." "Alone?" Hermione's voice was sharp. "They can't go alone." "They chose to. Frodo understands what the ring does to people. He saw what happened to Boromir. He will not risk corrupting anyone else." Harry felt something cold settle in his chest. Frodo and Sam, alone in the wild, heading into the heart of Sauron's domain. Two hobbits against all the armies of Mordor. We have to help them. We will. But first there is another task. Aragorn looked north toward where the Uruks had fled. "Merry and Pippin are prisoners. They will be taken to Saruman, tortured, killed. We cannot abandon them. So what do we do? Split up." Aragorn was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Legolas, Gimli, and I will pursue the Uruks. We will rescue the hobbits or die trying." He turned to Harry. "You three must follow Frodo. He will need all the help he can get. Just the three of us. The ring's corruption is strongest in large groups. 3 is enough. 3 is perhaps too many." Aragorn put a hand on Harry's shoulder. "You have been trained for this, Harry. By Gandalf, by Rivendell, by life itself. If anyone can help Frodo reach Mordor, it is you." Harry looked at Hermione. At Ron, they both looked terrified. But they both nodded. "All right," Harry said. "We'll go." Aragorn smiled. It was a sad smile, full of pride and sorrow. "Then this is where we part." He clasped Harry's forearm in the manner of warriors. "May the grace of the Valar protect you. May you find the strength to complete your quest. And may we meet again on the other side of this darkness." "You too," Harry managed. They said their goodbyes. Legolas and Gimli, who had grown fond of the 3 young wizards. Aragorn, who had become something like a mentor in Gandalf's absence. And then it was just the 3 of them, standing on the eastern shore, watching their friends disappear into the hills. "Well," Ron said. His voice was trying for humor and not quite making it. "Just the 3 of us against all of Mordor. Should be fun." "Don't be an idiot," Hermione said. But she was almost smiling. Harry looked east, toward the dark mountains on the horizon. Somewhere out there, Frodo and Sam were walking into the mouth of hell. Somewhere out there, Sauron was waiting. "Let's go," he said. They walked into the wilderness. The quest continued. Darkness fell that night. They made camp in a rocky hollow, hidden from the road by a screen of thorn bushes. Ron was in bad shape. The arrow wound had stopped bleeding, but his face was gray and sweaty, and he couldn't stop shivering. Hermione did what she could with healing charms and the few medical supplies they'd salvaged, but it wasn't enough. "He needs proper treatment," she said quietly, once Ron had fallen into an uneasy sleep. "Elven medicine, or at least a real healer. I can keep him stable, but if the wound gets infected..." "How long do we have?" "Days. Maybe a week." Her voice was hollow. "I don't know, Harry. I'm not a trained healer. I'm just making this up as I go." Harry put his arm around her. She leaned into him, exhausted and scared. "We'll figure it out. We always do we? Because it doesn't feel like we're figuring anything out. It feels like everything is falling apart." She looked at Ron's sleeping form. "Won't talk to me anymore. Ever since Lothlorien, he's been different, distant, and now this. He's scared. We all are. It's more than that. He looks at us, at you and me, and there's something in his eyes." She shook her head. "I'm probably imagining things. We're all stressed. We're all falling apart." Harry didn't answer. He had noticed it too. The way Ron watched them. The way his jaw tightened whenever Harry and Hermione touched. The way his hand sometimes drifted to the golden dagger Galadriel had given him. Something was wrong with Ron. Something had been planted in Lothlorien, in whatever vision Galadriel had shown him. But there was nothing Harry could do about it. Not now. Not with Mordor looming and enemies on every side and the weight of two worlds pressing down on his shoulders. So he just held Hermione and watched Ron sleep and waited for the dawn. It was a long night. Thereades they walked for 3 days. The landscape grew harsher with every mile. Green hills gave way to brown. Forests thinned to scrubland. The air grew thick and heavy, tasting of ash and something worse. Mordor was ahead. They could feel it, even if they couldn't see it yet. A darkness on the horizon, a weight on the soul. Ron walked in silence, his face set in a permanent scowl. He refused Hermione's help, refused Harry's attempts at conversation, refused everything except the bare minimum of food and water. The arrow wound was healing slowly, but something else was festering. "We need to talk about it," Hermione said on the third night. "Whatever is going on with Ron, we need to address it. His grieving. We all are. This isn't grief, Harry. This is something else. He's pulling away from us. Every day, a little more." She lowered her voice. "I'm scared for him." Harry looked across the camp to where Ron was sitting alone, staring at the fire. The dagger from Galadriel was in his hands, turning over and over in his fingers. "I'll talk to him. Be careful." Harry approached slowly, making sure his footsteps were audible. Ron didn't look up. "Hey, mind if I sit?" Ron shrugged. Harry took that as permission. For a while, neither of them spoke. The fire crackled. The wind whispered through the rocks. Somewhere in the distance, something howled. "I know something's wrong," Harry said finally. "You don't have to tell me what. But I want you to know that whatever it is, it doesn't change anything. You're still my best mate." Ron's hands tightened on the dagger. "Am I?" "Of course you are. Why would you even?" "Because you don't need me anymore." The words came out flat. Dead. "You've got Hermione now. You've got your training and your destiny and your special connection to the enemy. What do you need Ron Weasley for?" "Ron, that's not—" "I saw it, Harry." Ron finally looked at him, and his eyes were red, rimmed and hollow. "In Galadriel's mirror, I saw what happens. You and Hermione together, happy. And I'm just gone, like I never existed." Harry felt his stomach drop. That was a possible future, one of many. It doesn't mean.
It means everything.
Ron's voice cracked. "I've always known I was the spare, the extra. Fred and George are funnier. Percy's smarter. Bill and Charlie are cooler. And now, even in my own friendship, I'm being replaced. No one's replacing you, aren't they? Because from where I'm sitting, Hermione used to look at me the way she looks at you now. We used to be a team, all three of us equal. And now," he shook his head, "now I'm just the third wheel. The one who gets hurt. The one who slows everyone down." Harry didn't know what to say, because Ron wasn't entirely wrong. Things had changed. The kiss on the river had changed everything, in ways Harry hadn't fully considered. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I didn't mean to hurt you." "I know. That's what makes it worse." Ron stood up, tucking the dagger back into his belt. "I'm going to take first watch. You two should get some sleep." He walked away before Harry could respond. Harry sat by the dying fire for a long time, trying to figure out how everything had gone so wrong. Tchedgof Mardar. On the 5th day, they reached the Black Gate. It rose from the earth like a wall of shadow, stretching across the plain from mountain to mountain. Massive towers flanked it, crawling with orcs and other things that Harry didn't want to look at too closely. The gate itself was iron and steel and something darker, sealed tight, impregnable. "We can't go through there," Hermione whispered. They were crouched behind a rocky outcrop watching the gate from a distance. "There's no way. There has to be another way in." Harry studied the mountains on either side. A secret path. A gap. Something. "If there is, we need to find it quickly. Ron's fever is getting worse." Harry looked back at Ron, who was slumped against a rock, his face pale and sweaty. The arrow wound had gotten infected after all, despite everything Hermione had done. If they didn't find help soon, a noise. Behind them. Harry spun, wand raised. A creature crouched there, gray and thin, with huge pale eyes and long grasping fingers. It was almost invisible against the rocks, its skin the color of old bone. "Precious," it hissed. "They wants to go into the Black Land, into Mordor. But they cannot know. The gate is too strong." Two watched. Harry's heart hammered. "Who are you?" "Smeagol. Some calls me Smeagol." The creature crept closer, sniffing the air. "And you is the one the Master seeks, the one with the scar, the one who is bound to the shadow." "How do you know that?" "Smeagol knows many things. Smeagol has lived long and learned much." Those huge eyes fixed on Harry. "Smeagol can help. Knows another way. Secret way. Safe way. Why would you help us?" The creature was silent for a moment. Then, in a different voice, higher and almost childlike, "Because once Smeagol was helped. Once someone showed Smeagol kindness, when everyone else showed only cruelty." The voice changed again, darker, hungrier. "And because if you go into Mordor you brings Precious closer to Smeagol." "Yeses." Harry exchanged a glance with Hermione. This creature was clearly insane, possibly dangerous. But what choice did they have? "Show us the way," Harry said. "But if you try to betray us, I'll kill you myself."
No betrayal! No tricks!
Smeagol grinned, showing rows of pointed teeth. "Smeagol is good now. Smeagol serves the nice master." He scurried off into the rocks. After a moment's hesitation, Harry helped Ron to his feet. "Come on. We're following the creepy cave creature." "Great," Ron muttered. "Just great." They followed Smeagol into the darkness, toward whatever horrors awaited them in the secret paths of Mordor. Mordor was hell made real. Harry had thought he understood darkness. He had faced Sauron in visions. He had watched Gandalf fall into fire and shadow. He had killed with the unforgivable curse and felt the stain of it on his soul. None of it had prepared him for this. The land was dead, not dying, not struggling, but utterly and completely dead. Nothing grew here. Nothing lived. The ground was black and cracked, like the skin of a corpse left too long in the sun. The sky was a bruise of red and brown, choked with smoke from the mountain that dominated the horizon. Mount Doom. Orodruin. The place where everything would end. One way or another. They had been walking for 3 days since leaving Gollum's secret path. The creature had led them through tunnels and over mountains, through places that stank of death and things that crawled in the dark. And then, at the edge of Mordor proper, he had vanished. "Good luck, precious ones," Smeagol had hissed, those huge eyes gleaming with something that might have been hope or hunger. "Smeagol waits. Smeagol is patient. You brings it back to Smeagol, yes, you promises." Harry hadn't promised anything. He'd just watched the creature disappear into the rocks and felt a cold certainty that they hadn't seen the last of him. Now they were alone. 3 kids from another world, walking through the heart of Sauron's domain. The ring hung around Harry's neck. Frodo had given it to him 2 days ago, when they'd finally caught up with the hobbits in the foothills of the Ephel Doth. Frodo had been in bad shape. Exhausted, starving. The ring's weight had nearly broken him. "Take it," Frodo had whispered, pressing the chain into Harry's hand. "I can't carry it anymore. I can't even think anymore. Please, Harry." You're stronger than me. You have to be. Harry had tried to refuse. The ring wasn't his burden. It wasn't his destiny. But Frodo had collapsed and Sam had begged, and in the end, Harry had put the chain around his neck and felt the ring settle against his chest like a coal of ice and fire. Now Frodo and Sam were gone, sent back toward the edge of Mordor with what little supplies they had left. Harry had insisted. They had done enough. More than enough. This final stretch was his to walk. Harry. Hermione's voice was rough. She hadn't spoken much in the last day. None of them had. Harry, we need to stop. Ron can't go much further. He looked back. Ron was leaning on Hermione, his face gray and slick with sweat. The infection from the arrow wound had gotten worse despite everything they'd tried. He was burning up with fever, barely conscious. They should have sent him back with Frodo. Harry knew that. But Ron had refused, and by the time Harry thought to force the issue, they were too deep in Mordor to turn around. There. Harry pointed to a cluster of boulders that formed a rough shelter. We'll rest there. They limped to the rocks and collapsed in their shadow. Hermione immediately set to work on Ron, chanting healing spells, crushing athelas leaves that were brown and wilted but might still have some power. Harry sat apart, his back against cold stone, and tried not to feel the ring. It was getting harder. With every mile they walked, the ring grew heavier. Not physically. Physically it weighed nothing. But in his mind, in his soul, it was like carrying a mountain. It whispered to him constantly now. Promises. Threats. Visions of power and glory and everything he had ever wanted. And beneath the ring's voice, something else. Something that felt like Sauron himself, reaching through the metal, probing for weakness. His scar throbbed in time with his heartbeat. Harry. Hermione had finished with Ron. He was sleeping now or unconscious. Hard to tell the difference anymore. She sat down beside Harry, close enough that their shoulders touched. She looked terrible. They all did. Gaunt and hollow-eyed, covered in ash and grime, their clothes hanging off them in tatters. How is he? Not good. Her voice cracked. The infection is spreading. If we don't get him real help soon. She didn't finish. She didn't need to. We'll reach the mountain tomorrow, Harry said. One more day. Then it's over. And then what? Then we go home. All of us. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she took his hand, her fingers cold and trembling. I'm scared, Harry. Me too. What if we don't make it? What if the ring? She swallowed hard. What if it takes you? Like it almost took Boromir. It won't. How do you know? Harry didn't answer, because he didn't know. The ring was stronger than he'd ever imagined. It was patient and clever, and it knew exactly what buttons to push. Every time he thought he had a grip on it, it slipped through his fingers and whispered something new. Because I have you, he said finally. Both of you. As long as I'm not alone, it can't win. Hermione leaned her head on his shoulder. I love you, Harry. I love you too. They sat like that for a long time, watching the red sky darken toward something that might have been night. There were no stars here, no moon. Just darkness and the distant glow of the mountain, burning against the horizon like a wound in the world. Final die morning came without light. Harry woke to find Hermione still pressed against his side, her breathing slow and even. Ron was awake, propped against a rock, his eyes fever bright and glassy. Hey, Ron said. His voice was a rasp. Moving. Soon. Harry extricated himself from Hermione carefully, trying not to wake her. How do you feel? Like death warmed over. Ron tried to smile. It came out as a grimace. But I can walk, probably. Ron, maybe you should. Don't. The word came out sharp, hard. Don't tell me to stay behind. Don't tell me I'm too weak or too sick or too useless. I'm finishing this with you. Both of you. That's not negotiable. Harry looked at his friend, at the fever flush on his cheeks and the stubborn set of his jaw and the golden dagger still clutched in his hand. Okay. 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 We do this together. All three of us. Something shifted in Ron's expression. Relief, maybe. Or gratitude. or something darker that Harry didn't want to examine too closely. They woke Hermione and ate what little food they had left. Stale lembas and water that tasted of ash. Then they gathered their things and started walking. Mount Doom grew larger with every step. Up close, it was even more terrifying than it had been from a distance. The mountain wasn't just a volcano, it was a presence, a malevolence. Heat radiated from it in waves that made the air shimmer and dance. The ground shook with constant tremors, like a giant's heartbeat. And at the peak, barely visible through the smoke and flame, a red light pulsed, watching, waiting. Sauron knew they were coming. Harry's scar was screaming now. Constant pain, constant pressure, constant whispers that wormed into his brain and wouldn't let go. "Give it to me," the voice said. It could have been the ring. It could have been Sauron. It could have been both. "Give it to me and the pain will stop. Give it to me and I will make you a king. Give it to me and you will never lose anyone again." "Harry." Hermione's voice cut through the whispers. He blinked and realized he had stopped walking. He was standing in the middle of the ash plain, one hand clutching the ring through his shirt, his face twisted into an expression he couldn't feel. "I'm fine." "You're not fine." She took his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. "How bad is it?" "Bad? No point in lying. It's getting worse. The closer we get, the stronger it gets. Can you keep going?" Harry looked at the mountain, at the long path that wound up its side toward the crack of doom. At the end of everything, yes. He wasn't sure if it was true. But what choice did he have? Sob. They found the tunnel by accident. One moment they were climbing a rocky slope, picking their way over boulders and around fissures that leaked poisonous steam. The next, the ground gave way beneath Ron's feet, and he was falling, screaming, vanishing into darkness. "Hurrow!" Harry lunged forward, but Hermione was faster. She grabbed Ron's arm just before he disappeared, her feet sliding on the loose stone, her face contorted with effort.
"Help me?"
"Harry, help me." He grabbed her waist and pulled. Together, they hauled Ron back onto solid ground. For a moment, they just lay there, gasping. Then Hermione sat up and looked at the hole Ron had almost fallen into. "What is that?" It was a tunnel, carved into the rock leading down into absolute blackness. The walls were smooth, too smooth to be natural, and there was something on them, something that glistened in the dim light. Webs. Harry's blood went cold. "We need to move," he said. "Now." Too late. Something burst from the tunnel, something huge and black and many-legged, with eyes that burned with ancient hunger and mandibles that dripped with poison. Shelob. Harry had heard of her. Gandalf had told him stories long ago about the great spiders of Middle-earth. Creatures of darkness, older than Sauron, hungrier than death. None of the stories had prepared him for the reality. She was the size of a house. Her legs were as thick as tree trunks, covered in coarse black hair. Her body was bloated and obscene, pulsing with the life of 1,000 consumed victims. And her eyes, all 8 of them, were fixed on Harry with an intelligence that was horribly, terribly human. "Run," Harry whispered. Nobody ran. The spider struck. One massive leg swept toward Hermione, who threw herself backward, narrowly avoiding being impaled. Another leg caught Harry in the chest and sent him flying into a boulder. Pain exploded through his already damaged ribs. He heard something crack. His vision went white. When it cleared, Shelob was looming over him, her mandibles inches from his face. He could smell her breath, rot and death, and something sweet that made him want to vomit. Incendio. Fire erupted from somewhere to his left. Hermione, her wand blazing, sending gouts of flame at the spider's eyes. Shelob shrieked and recoiled, giving Harry just enough time to roll away. "The phial!" Hermione screamed. Harry Galadriel's phial. He fumbled at his chest, the star pendant. The light of Erendil. He grabbed it and held it up, and light blazed forth. Not ordinary light. This was something else. Pure and silver and ancient. The light of the elder days. The light of stars that had burned before the sun was born. It cut through the darkness like a blade and struck Shelob full in the face. The spider screamed, not just in pain, in fear, in recognition of something she had hoped never to see again. Hermione knew Hermione was already moving. Cutting curses flew from her wand, slicing through Shelob's legs, through her eyes, through the bloated mass of her body. The spider thrashed and screamed and tried to flee, but there was nowhere to go. And then Ron was there. He had picked himself up from wherever he'd fallen. His face was gray with fever and his hands were shaking, and he could barely stand. But he was holding the golden dagger that Galadriel had given him, and his eyes were burning with something that wasn't quite sane. For Gendalf, he drove the blade into Shelob's underbelly. The spider convulsed. Black blood sprayed everywhere, coating Ron, coating the rocks, coating everything. Shelob's legs gave out and she collapsed, twitching, dying, finally falling still. Ron stood over her body, the dagger still in his hand, breathing hard. Then he turned and vomited. Harry managed to get to his feet. His ribs were on fire. Every breath was agony, but he made it to Ron's side and put a hand on his shoulder. "You okay?" Ron wiped his mouth with a shaking hand. No, I'm really not." He looked at the dagger, at the black blood coating the blade. "But I did it. I actually did something useful." "You saved us," Hermione said. She was bleeding from a gash on her forehead, but she was smiling. "Ron, you were amazing." Something flickered in Ron's eyes. Something that might have been hope. Then it was gone, replaced by that cold, hollow look that had been there since Lothlorien. "Let's just keep moving. We're almost there." Track-off Dome, the path up Mount Doom was worse than anything that had come before. The heat was unbearable. The air was poison. Every step felt like walking through fire, like the mountain itself was trying to burn them alive before they could reach their goal. Harry carried the ring in his fist now. He couldn't bear to have it against his skin anymore. It was too loud, too demanding. Every time it touched him, he heard Sauron's voice, felt Sauron's will, saw visions of what he could become if he just gave in. King of two worlds, master of life and death. Reunited with everyone he had ever lost. All he had to do was claim it. Harry. Hermione was beside him, holding him up when his legs threatened to give out. "We're almost there. I can see the entrance." He looked up. There it was. A dark hole in the side of the mountain, maybe 50 feet above them. Smoke and fire poured from it and the heat was incredible, but it was there. The end was in sight. "Come on." He grabbed her hand. "Let's finish this." They climbed. Hand over hand, foot after foot, inch by agonizing inch. Ron was falling behind, his fever too high, his strength too depleted. But he kept coming. Stubborn, determined, refusing to quit even when his body was begging him to stop. And then they were there. The crack of doom. It was a cavern carved into the heart of the mountain. The walls glowed red with heat. The floor was stone, cracked and blackened, and at its center was a chasm of fire. Lava churned below, orange and white and unbearable. The forge where Sauron had created the One Ring. Harry stood at the edge and looked down. This was it, the moment everything had been building toward. 10 years of training, months of traveling, friends lost, innocence destroyed. All of it led here, to this moment, to this choice. He pulled the ring from his pocket and held it over the fire. The whispers exploded into screaming. "No!" The ring shrieked.
"You cannot destroy me! I am part of you!
"We are bound, you and I, bound by blood and
Shadow and prophecy! Destroy me and you destroy yourself!"
Harry's hand shook. The ring was so heavy, so loud, so right. Because part of what it said was true, wasn't it? He was bound to Sauron. The scar on his forehead was proof of that. And beneath the scar, deeper still, the fragment of Voldemort's soul that had lodged there that night in Godric's Hollow. 2 dark lords. 2 pieces of evil, both of them wound into the fabric of his being. If he destroyed the ring, what would happen to him? "Harry!" Hermione's voice, distant. Far away. "Harry, drop it. Drop it now." He couldn't. His fingers wouldn't open. The ring was fused to his hand, or his hand was fused to the ring, and he couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. "Claim me," Sauron whispered. "Claim me and live forever. Claim me and become what you were always meant to be. Claim me and save everyone you love." I? His vision was going dark, or maybe it was going red. He couldn't tell anymore. All he could see was the ring. All he could feel was the ring. All he could think about was the ring. "The ring is mine." The words came from his mouth, but they didn't sound like him. They sounded like something else, something ancient and terrible and hungry. He was putting it on. He watched his hand move like it belonged to someone else, watched the ring slide toward his finger, watched the world begin to shift and change. No, something slammed into him from behind. Harry hit the ground hard, the ring flying from his grasp, skittering across the stone. He gasped, suddenly free, suddenly himself, suddenly horrified by what he had almost done. Ron stood over him. The golden dagger was in his hand. His face was twisted with rage and fear and something that looked like relief. "Ron." Hermione's voice was sharp with confusion. "What are you doing? What needs to be done?" Ron's voice was flat, dead. He was going to claim it. He was going to become like Boromir. I had to stop him. "Ron, he wasn't—" "I saw it." Ron's voice cracked. "I've been watching him for days, weeks. Ever since he took the ring, he's been changing, getting darker, more distant. And now, right at the end, he was going to betray us all." Harry struggled to sit up. His head was pounding. The ring's absence was like a hole in his chest, cold and empty and screaming to be filled. "Ron, I didn't mean, didn't you?" Ron's eyes were burning. "I saw what you've become, Harry. In Galadriel's mirror, I saw you leading armies. I saw you crowned in shadow. I saw you destroy everything we love."
That was a possible future. One of many.
"You can't." "I can." Ron bent down and picked up the ring. The moment it touched his hand, something changed. Harry saw it happen. The way Ron's face went slack, then hungry. The way his fingers curled around the gold like a lover's caress. The way his eyes darkened and his lips curved into a smile that wasn't quite Ron. "Ron." Hermione's voice was trembling. "Ron, put it down. Please." "Why?" Ron's voice had changed. Deeper, older. "So Harry can take it again. So he can become what the mirror showed me."
The mirror was lying. Or showing you fears, not truth.
"Ron, you know Harry would never." "I don't know anything anymore." Ron's hand tightened on the ring. "I know that you love him. I know that you chose him. I know that I'm always second best, always the spare, always the one who gets left behind." "That's not true." ISNTT. The words exploded out of Ron like a physical force. "Every time I close my eyes, I see it. You and Harry together happy, and I'm just gone. I never existed." Tears were streaming down his face now, mixing with the sweat and the fever flush. "At least with this I matter. At least with this I'm not nothing." Harry forced himself to his feet. His ribs were screaming, his head was pounding. But he made himself stand, made himself look his best friend in the eye. "Ron, listen to me. That's not the ring talking. That's you. Your fears, your insecurities. The ring is using them against you, just like it used mine. Shut up. You're not nothing. You've never been nothing. You followed me into another world. You fought trolls and orcs and giant spiders. You saved my life. You saved all our lives."
"Shut it, Pew."
"I love you, Ron." The words came out broken but true. "Not like I love Hermione, but I love you. You're my brother, my best friend. Nothing is ever going to change that." Ron's hand was shaking. The ring was glowing, hot and hungry, whispering promises that only he could hear. "I don't believe you." "Then believe this." Harry took a step forward. "If you claim that ring, you'll become exactly what you're afraid of. You'll lose yourself. You'll lose us. You'll become a weapon for Sauron, and everything we've fought for will be for nothing. Maybe I don't care anymore. You do." Harry took another step. "The real Ron does. The Ron who helped me fight a troll in a bathroom. The Ron who refused to stay behind even when he was sick and scared. The Ron who killed a giant spider because he wanted to prove he wasn't useless. Harry, stop. Hermione's voice was desperate. He's too far gone. The ring has him. No. Harry was close now. Close enough to touch. The ring doesn't have him. Fear has him, and fear can be beaten. He reached out and put his hand over Ron's. The ring's screaming filled his head. Power and rage and hunger, all of it crashing against him like a tidal wave. It wanted him. It wanted Ron. It wanted both of them, twisted together, slaves to its will forever. But beneath the screaming, beneath the ring's voice, Harry heard something else. Ron, crying, like he'd been crying for weeks, for months, since long before they ever left Hogwarts. "I'm so tired," Ron whispered. "I'm so tired of being afraid." "I know." Harry's voice was gentle. "I know you are. But you don't have to be afraid alone." "Yes, I do. That's all I've ever been." "Alone." "No." Hermione moved to Ron's other side. Her hand joined theirs, covering the ring, covering both of them. "Never alone. We're here. We've always been here." Ron's face crumpled. The ring fell from his fingers. It hit the ground with a sound like the whole world breaking. For a moment, all three of them just stood there, staring at it. The most powerful weapon in all of Middle-earth, lying in the ash like a piece of trash. Then Harry picked it up. The whispers started again. Quieter now, weaker. The ring knew it was losing. It could feel the end coming. Harry walked to the edge of the chasm and held it out over the fire. "This is for Gandalf," he said, "for Boromir, for everyone who died because of you." He opened his hand, the ring fell. After Yarmich, for a moment, nothing happened. Then the mountain screamed, not with sound, with magic, with power, with rage so vast and ancient that Harry felt it in his bones, in his blood, in the very fabric of his being. The ring hit the lava and began to melt. And as it melted, something in the distance shattered. Harry turned toward the window of the cavern, toward the land spread out below. In the far distance, beyond the plains of Mordor, beyond the Black Gate, a tower was falling. Barad-dûr, Sauron's fortress, was crumbling like a sand castle in the tide, and above the tower the eye. The great eye of Sauron, wreathed in flame, fixed on the mountain, on Harry, on the ring that was even now dissolving in the fire below. Harry felt the moment Sauron died. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't thunderous. It was just silence. The voice in his head that had been whispering for months, for years, finally going quiet. The pressure behind his scar finally releasing. The weight on his soul finally lifting. Sauron was gone, and so was everything holding the mountain together. "We need to go." Hermione was pulling at his arm. "Harry, the whole place is collapsing." He looked around. She was right. The walls were cracking. The ceiling was falling. Rivers of lava were starting to pour from every fissure, and the floor was tilting beneath their feet. Ron was on his knees, staring at his hands. Blank, empty, lost. Harry grabbed him and hauled him up.
"Mom V."
They ran. Through the cavern, down the path, over rocks that were splitting and falling into the abyss. The heat was unbearable. The smoke was blinding. Every breath felt like swallowing fire. Harry's ribs gave out halfway down. He collapsed, gasping, and Hermione was there, pulling him up, dragging him forward. "Don't you dare," she gasped. "Don't you dare give up now." "I can't." "UK." She kissed him. Hard and desperate and tasting of blood and ash. And somehow, impossibly, it gave him strength. He kept running. They were almost at the base when the ground opened up beneath Hermione. Harry saw it happen in slow motion. The crack spreading through the stone. The floor giving way. Hermione's eyes going wide as she realized what was about to happen. She fell. "No." Harry lunged forward and caught her hand. She dangled over a river of lava, her face streaked with tears and terror, her grip slipping in his sweaty palm. "Hold on." He tried to pull her up, but his arms were too weak, his body too broken.
"Hermione, hold on. Harry."
Her voice was strange, calm, resigned. "Harry, you have to let go."
"No."
"The ledge is breaking.
"If you don't let go, you'll fall too." "I don't care." "I do."
She smiled. It was the most beautiful and terrible thing Harry had ever seen. "I love you, Harry. I love you so much. But you have to live, you have to go home, you have to—" The rock cracked again. Harry felt himself sliding toward the edge, and then Ron was there. He grabbed Harry's waist and pulled. At the same time, he reached down with his other hand and caught Hermione's wrist. "Puel!" Ron screamed. His face was gray with exhaustion and his arms were shaking, but he didn't let go. "AROL!" Together, they hauled Hermione up. They collapsed on solid ground just as the ledge they'd been standing on crumbled into the fire below. For a long moment, none of them moved. They just lay there, tangled together, gasping for breath. Then Hermione started laughing. It wasn't happy laughter. It was hysterical, desperate, the laughter of someone who had stared death in the face and somehow, impossibly, survived. Harry and Ron joined in. They lay on the burning mountain, surrounded by chaos and destruction, and laughed until they cried. Rescue the eagles came at dawn. Great eagles sent by Gandalf, who had apparently survived his fall and returned more powerful than ever. They swept out of the sky like hope made manifest and plucked the 3 teenagers from the mountainside just as the last of the ground gave way beneath them. Harry barely remembered the flight. He drifted in and out of consciousness, aware only of wind and feathers and Hermione's hand in his. When he finally woke properly, he was in a tent somewhere, wrapped in blankets, with familiar faces looking down at him. Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, all of them battered and bruised but alive, all of them smiling, and behind them, leaning on a staff that gleamed white in the morning light, a figure that made Harry's heart stop. Gandalf, the old wizard, no, not old anymore, something else entirely, smiled down at him. "Hello, Harry. You're alive. How are you?" "It is a long story. Perhaps for another time." Gandalf sat down beside the bed. His robes were white now, his face ageless, his eyes holding a light that hadn't been there before. "You did well, my boy. You did very well indeed. The ring, destroyed, and Sauron with it. The war is over." Harry closed his eyes. Tears leaked from beneath his lids. "I almost failed. At the end, I almost claimed it. But you didn't, because of Ron and Hermione. They saved me." "Yes, they did?" Gandalf's hand was warm on his forehead. "That is what friends are for, Harry. To catch us when we fall, to remind us who we are when we forget. Are they okay? Ron and Hermione, are they? They are here, resting, recovering." Gandalf smiled. "They asked about you every hour until I finally had to sedate them both so they would sleep." Harry laughed. It hurt his ribs, but he didn't care. "It's really over. It is really over. Sauron is gone. The ring is unmade. Middle-earth is saved." Gandalf's smile faded slightly. "But there is still much to be done. Wars end, but healing takes time. And there are those who will need help finding their way back to the light. Ron, among others. The ring's corruption runs deep even when it is not claimed. Your friend will need patience and love and time. He'll have them." Harry struggled to sit up. "Can I see them?" "Hermione and Ron, soon. Rest now. You have earned it." Harry wanted to argue, but his body had other ideas. His eyes were already closing, his mind already drifting. The last thing he saw before sleep took him was Gandalf's face, peaceful and proud and full of love. Hail Aig! The days that followed were a blur of sleep and food and slow, painful recovery. Harry's ribs were badly broken, 3 of them, plus 2 that had cracked during the escape from Mount Doom. The healers, a mix of elves and men from Gondor, did what they could with magic and medicine, but some injuries took time. Hermione was in better shape. Burns on her hands and face, a concussion, exhaustion. Nothing that rest wouldn't fix. Ron was the worst. Not physically. The fever had broken once they left Mordor, and his arrow wound was finally starting to heal. But the damage the ring had done to his mind was harder to mend. Harry visited him every day. Sometimes they talked. Mostly they just sat together in silence, watching the camp go about its business, letting time do what words could not. "I almost killed you." It was the 3rd day. Ron's voice was flat, hollow, empty of everything. No, you didn't. I thought about it. When I had the ring, I thought about just ending you. Ending everything. Ron's hands were shaking. What kind of person thinks something like that? Someone who was being manipulated by the most powerful evil weapon ever created. Harry put a hand on Ron's shoulder. It wasn't you, Ron. It was the ring. Part of it was me. Ron finally looked at him. His eyes were red. The jealousy. The fear. The feeling like I was never good enough. That was all me. So what? Everyone feels that way sometimes. It doesn't make you evil, doesn't it? No. Harry's voice was firm. You want to know what makes you good? You stopped. At the end, when it mattered most, you let go of the ring. You saved Hermione. You saved me. I had to. After everything I said, everything I felt, Ron's voice cracked. How can you even stand to look at me? Because you're my friend. Because I know who you really are, even when you forget. Harry squeezed his shoulder. We're going to get through this, Ron. Together, all three of us. For a long moment, Ron was silent. Then, slowly, he nodded. Okay. Okay. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. But you're buying the first round when we get home. Butterbeer. The good stuff. Harry laughed. Deal. They stayed in Middle-earth for a month. There was a coronation to attend. Aragorn finally accepting his destiny, becoming King Alessar of Gondor. The ceremony was beautiful and grand, and exactly the kind of thing Harry would have found overwhelming a year ago. Now it just felt like a beginning. There were funerals too, for Boromir, for the soldiers who had fallen at Pelennor Fields, for all the countless unnamed dead who had given their lives in the war against Sauron. Harry stood at each one and tried to feel something other than numb. And then, finally, it was time to go home. Gandalf opened the portal on a clear morning in Minas Tirith. The city gleamed white in the sunlight, beautiful and ancient and utterly different from anything Harry had known before coming here. He was going to miss it. You could stay, you know. Aragorn had come to see them off. There would be a place for all of you here. Lands, titles, whatever you wanted. Thanks. Harry meant it. But we have our own world, our own battles to fight. Voldemort, among other things. Harry smiled. But that's a problem for tomorrow. Today, I just want to go home. They said their goodbyes. Aragorn and Arwen, Legolas and Gimli, Frodo and Sam and Merry and Pippin, all of them recovered now, all of them bearing scars that would never fully heal. And Gandalf, the wizard, the friend, the father, whatever he was, he embraced Harry tightly before letting go. I am proud of you, Harry. More proud than I can say. Will I see you again? Perhaps. The paths between worlds are not entirely closed, and I find myself reluctant to say goodbye completely. Gandalf's eyes twinkled. Besides, I believe I still have much to teach you, and you still have much to learn. Harry smiled. I'd like that. Then go, live your life, fight your battles, and know that whatever happens you will never be alone. Harry stepped through the portal. Epilogu, they emerged in the forbidden forest at Hogwarts on a warm summer evening. The castle rose in the distance unchanged, eternal, exactly as Harry remembered it. Students were walking across the grounds, laughing, talking, living their ordinary magical lives. They had no idea what had happened. No idea what had almost happened. No idea how close two worlds had come to total destruction. Harry preferred it that way. Dumbledore met them at the edge of the forest. He looked older than Harry remembered. Tired. But there was relief in his eyes as he took in the three of them, alive and whole. Welcome back. Thanks. Harry meant it. Whatever complicated feelings he had about Dumbledore, he was glad to be home. There will be questions, of course. Explanations required. But that can wait. Dumbledore smiled gently. For now, I believe there are families waiting, and friends, and perhaps some well-deserved rest. Ron was already moving toward the castle. Hermione hesitated, looking back at Harry. Come on, she said, holding out her hand. Let's go home. Harry took her hand. They walked together across the grounds, toward the castle, toward the future. Behind them, the portal flickered and faded, the connection between worlds closing, leaving only memory. And in Harry's pocket, cool and quiet now, Galadriel's pendant pulsed with a gentle light. A reminder, a promise, a hope for tomorrow. The quest was over. The story continued.